I'm calling this meeting to order. I forgot to turn on my mic, forgive me. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and the salute to the New Mexico flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. Saludo la bandera del Estado de Nuevo México, el símbolo de amistad perfecta entre culturas unidas. Let us go for the approval of the agenda. I'm going to have a roll call vote. Board Member Carrillo? Yes. Board Member Trujillo? Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay. So, Board Member Carrillo?
Yes.
Yes.
Board Member Trujillo?
Yeah. Yes.
Vice President Cashman? And the President votes yes. So we have approval of the agenda. Let's move on to board announcements. Are there any announcements from the board? When I do it the other way, you correct me to do it this way, so I'm going to do it this way.
Okay, so I was at Santa Fe High School the other day as they were finishing up Freshman Bridge, and it was really something. They had more than 50%. They had more than 200 kids participating in Freshman Bridge over at Santa Fe High. I'm not sure what happened at Capitol. I know that you did your version of that as well. I just didn't happen to be there that day. And what was also super cool was the leadership team that they have at Santa Fe High School. And there were over 30 kids that are student leaders. They were sophomore, juniors, and seniors that really worked with all of the freshmen as part of Freshman Bridge. And so, I mean, just both of our schools and the way we're just, jumping on freshmen from the beginning to make sure that they're acclimated to their new surroundings and they don't, to just give them, well, that jump start, right? Now the next thing's jump start, but to give them the jump start that they need. So just enormously successful, because I know that we took maybe I'll do some more discussion, but we took a hit this week, in the news, but there are plenty of great things happening at Santa Fe schools that people often are not aware of. So, and that was one of them. Keep your eyes on sports. Opening night is August 25th for Santa Fe High School at home against St. Mike's. Capitol, I know, is away. How far away? Oh, not so far away.
Let's go.
Except the road is just hard getting up there. But yeah, so the season's coming. So book yourselves for the following 12 Fridays because we are going to the playoffs starting on the 25th.
Thank you very much. Any other board member announcements? Okay, let's introduce the interpreter. Mrs. Abeda.
Good evening, board members. Audience, my name is Alma Bejar. I'll be doing the translation services in Spanish. Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Alma Bejar y voy a hacer las traducciones en español. Si gustan mi asistencia, voy a estar hacia atrás. Gracias.
Thank you very much. Yes, sure.
Super. Not, I'm going to. In Sunday's paper, this was brilliant. Our back to school, they're just getting better every Sunday. And so to Jeff and staff and everyone who put this together, the back to school issue in the newspaper, it's just becoming more comprehensive with more useful information. And I just wanted to say hats off to staff for getting this done and getting this done so well.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to Superintendent Announcements.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board.
I thought I pressed it. Oh, okay. We went back off.
We're a little out of practice. We've been off for a month.
Okay. So I think they're in order by
school or location. So Capitol High School, our new principal, if you'd stand please, Mariah Runyon, has worked for the Santa Fe Public Schools for the past 17 years, taught at Capshaw and Santa Fe High. She most recently served as Associate Superintendent, gave you a promotion, Associate Principal for the past 5 years at Capitol High. And in 2007, she was awarded National Board Certification for Professional Teaching Standards for Instruction in English Language Arts. So let's welcome her. Jamie Holliday, Assistant Principal, Capitol High School. Ms. Halliday has been the assessment coordinator and SAT leader at Capitol High, where she's taught for many years. She's also adjunct faculty member at Santa Fe Community College for the last 5 years. Welcome to that position. At Cesar Chavez, Carlos Lee, from Corpus Christi. I think I announced him, but he was not here before. To be presented to the board, has served as a classroom teacher for 12 years and a school administrator for 3. We're very excited to have him there. He was an assistant at Cesar Chavez for 6 years, and we're super happy. His future goal is to pursue a doctorate in educational leadership. Welcome, Carlos. Assistant principal at Cesar Chavez, Amanda Chavez. She was a special ed contact teacher at Amy Beal. She did her administrative internship at Tony Hillerman Middle School in Albuquerque, where she taught for several years. Welcome. E.J. Martinez Principal, Jill Lee. Jill Lee comes to Santa Fe from Alexandria City Public Schools in Virginia, where she served as principal for a very large school district, John Adams Elementary. She has 11 years of administrative experience, serving in a variety of capacities. She has extensive experience working with ELL and diverse student populations. Welcome. You all know Will Wade. I don't believe he is here. He will be serving at ECO and has a history in distinguished work as a principal, made some significant changes at the Promise Academy at the Martin Luther King High School in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and has received national recognition for his work in school leadership. We're excited about his work at ECO. And Kelly Rinaldi. Kelly Rinaldi will be the assistant principal at ECO, and that's our early college opportunities and applied science magnet school. She previously served as assistant principal at Santa Fe High and has had assistant principal experience at Espanola Valley School. At El Dorado, assistant principal Karen Lindy. Welcome to her. She comes to Santa Fe Public Schools from the May Center for Learning, where she was co-founder and director of intermediate and high school. She's the head of middle school at Desert Academy for 4 years. She's also taught at St. Michael's High School. Welcome. Assistant principal at Gonzales, Robin Chavez. Robin was assistant at St. Michael's High School. She has worked for Santa Fe Public Schools as assistant principal at Capitol High. She was also principal at Alameda Middle School and assistant principal at El Dorado. So, welcome. New principal at Kearney Elementary School, Stephanie Hubley. Stephanie taught first grade, second, fourth. She's taught just about every grade, middle school and TESOL in the home state of Connecticut, as well as in New York and in Santa Fe at Pinon Elementary. Is Ms. Hubley here? No. Okay. She's been an assistant principal at Gonzales Community School since 2015. Assistant principal at Milagro. I think we introduced Jason Hunter, so I don't think he's here. Nina Otero. Principal, Pamela Hyde. Ms. Hyde worked in the financial services industry, but left to pursue her dream of becoming a teacher. Yes. Her first job as an educator was as a life skills teacher. She pursued a Master's of Arts at Dallas Baptist University, and she was most recently an assistant principal at Nina Otero Community School. Welcome. Assistant Principal at Nino Otero, Alexander Greco. Mr. Greco comes to Santa Fe Public Schools from the Greenwich, this is weird, it says R at School District. Okay, well, sorry about that, where he worked as an assistant principal for high school and middle schools. So welcome to you, to our district. Jennifer Thompson, our new principal at Nye Center. Before joining the Santa Fe Public Schools as Director of Exceptional Student Services, Ms. Thompson was Academic Administrator of the Albuquerque Sign Language Academy Charter School for 5 years. She served as an assistant principal at Hawthorne Elementary in Albuquerque, and also taught at the New Mexico Preschool for the Deaf. Brings a lot of experience to Nye. Welcome. Principal at Ramirez Thomas, Loretta Booker. Loretta served as an educator in the Santa Fe Public Schools for 11 years as a dual language bilingual classroom teacher, including 10 years at Salazar and 1 year at Cesar Chavez. She serves as co-chairperson of the Board of Directors of Dual Language Education of New Mexico. Very proud of you. Thank you for choosing our school district. I believe we introduced Laura Jeffrey. I don't know if she was here. Is Laura here? There she is. Laura will be serving as our principal at Wood Gormley. She's was currently the principal of Capshaw. She has 10 years of administrative experience, which also includes 6 years as assistant principal at Rio Rancho High School. She also served in the U.S. Army as a finance officer, and she is a doctoral student at UNM. So welcome to your new position. We have a new director in multicultural education, Lisa Vihil. And Lisa worked most recently as assistant principal, data coach, and testing coordinator and chief bottle washer at El Camino Real. Brings a lot of experience in this field, and we're super excited to have you in that role. Executive Director of School Support, former principal at Capitol High, Chanel Wilson Segura. Chanel has earned her degrees from UNM, including a Bachelor's of Arts in English and Dance and a Master of Arts in Secondary Ed and an Educational Specialist in Educational Leadership. She's currently working towards her Doctorate of Education. Ms. Wilson Segura's research interests center on transformational leadership. She served at Capitol High as a principal since 2011, so we're very pleased to have her heading this new role. Thank you. Executive Director of School Support, also teaching and learning, Vanessa Romero. Vanessa is a product of the Santa Fe Public Schools. During her 14-year career in education, Ms. Romero served in a variety of capacities. After her successful teaching career, she was assistant principal of Agua Fria, and then she was asked to help lead a $3 million school turnaround grant at Ramirez Thomas. After a brief tenure as principal at Salazar, she returned to Ramirez Thomas, where she and her staff have continued to sustain reform efforts and improvement. Welcome to your new role. Last but not least is Dr. Melissa Lomax here. Dr. Lomax will be our new Executive Director of Curriculum Instruction. Before coming to Santa Fe Public Schools as a principal for ECO, Dr. Lomax served at NMHU Higher Ed Center Steering Committee. She worked at the Public Education Department for many years in career technical education. She also has vast experience in school districts in New Mexico and Texas, and served as a Senate Majority Pool Analyst at the New Mexico Legislature. So this is the new administrative team. A lot of changes. Welcome, everybody. Yeah, let's have everybody stand. Ms. Price asked for that.
Could everyone stand, please?
Yay.
Welcome.
And with the exception of the athletic and activities director, Ms. Sink, I believe we're fully staffed, correct? Ms. Sink? Yoo-hoo. I said, besides the athletic and activities director, we're fully staffed. So we're not starting without any principals, so I'm very happy about
Very
that.
good. And also, many of you I have worked with in this district over the years. I'm so proud of each and every single one of you.
we're very excited. We can hardly wait. And all our returning principals and assistant principals and directors, we have a dynamite team. We're very excited about this school year. Summer school graduation, hats off to Chanel Wilson Segura, who had that effort. We had a wonderful graduation commencement ceremony. We had a record 52 total graduates, 23 from Capitol High, 14 from Santa Fe High, 14 from Engage, and a thank you to Leanne Devane, James Ledger, and Clarissa Madrid-Riggins for their performance of Pomp and Circumstance. It was a standing room only event for all of you that were here. It was quite touching. And then, last but not least, we, and I just had the number, I think we're, Stephen, 36 FTE. When I go to the podium, on vacancies.
President Price, Superintendent Garcia, we are currently down to 36.40 vacancies. 0.40 is a partial FTE. We have 11 pending offers as of today, so our goal for the end of the week is to get into the 20s.
And that's, those aren't just teaching, those are all positions, right?
Primarily, the numbers we're giving you are concentrated on the teaching and the classroom positions.
Okay.
So again, there is an expanded view of vacancies in regards to other FTEs such
And
as
this is
bus
over
drivers.
30 schools, correct?
Correct.
So, we're closing in on it. We're not letting up. I'm very pleased to share with you a recruitment video that Jeff, our Chief Community Engagement Officer, wrote, directed, produced in collaboration with Joe Beta and the mayor. We obviously would have liked to have done this earlier. We didn't, but it's something that we will use this year. And Jeff, you might want to talk a little bit about the strategy that we're going to undertake in terms of getting this out, not only in New Mexico, but in the United States.
Madam President, members of the board, superintendent. So we worked with the city on this. We want to recruit the most dynamic educators we can to our city. And so we thought one of the routes we can do, the methods we can utilize, is to sell our city and the surrounding area, as well as the new direction of the school and Project North Star. And so in doing this, we collaborated with the city. Joe Beta helped. We got the mayor out there, and special thanks to Gonzales Community School, the PTA, Mike Lee, and the crew who helped us really bring this together quickly.
One other point in having, the talent to be able to do it in-house, we saved a lot of money. We did work with Joe, but he also is very good to the Santa Fe Public Schools. So we did save a tremendous amount of money in doing this. So we're going to share it with you. It's just a couple of minutes.
Hi, I'm Dr. Veronica C. Garcia, Superintendent of the Santa Fe Public Schools, where we take a holistic approach to education by putting an emphasis on sound-driven teaching practices and engagement of all students through music, art, athletics, activities, and innovative programs like our medical and engineering career pathways. We limit the amount of testing in order to afford our educators the opportunity to focus on academic rigor and their practice. Our students receive a top-notch education, and our faculty and staff are treated with the utmost respect and regard as valuable members of our team. By doing this, we are bringing back the joy of teaching and learning to our schools, and we are creating a world-class school system for the world-class city we serve, Santa Fe, a place where there is no shortage of things to do. For art lovers, we have more than 250 galleries containing diverse visual arts spanning ancient traditional art to the most contemporary, making it one of the largest and most important art markets in the country. Our city is known for its world-class cuisine in restaurants that range from fine dining to Santa Fe casual that will dazzle any palate. We are also well known for our multicultural music scene. A plethora of outdoor recreational opportunities, colorful markets, and legendary history and culture.
As Mayor of Santa Fe, I invite you to explore our world-class city.
And as the Superintendent of Santa Fe Public Schools, I invite you to explore a career with our world-class schools.
World-class city.
World-class schools. Come join our team!
was going to say, I want to work there, but I remember I do work here, so I'm pretty lucky. So that concludes superintendent announcements.
Board Member Creel?
On the HR piece, at some point, and please not in the next 2 weeks, we're trying to open school, but can we get a report on how exit interviews went this May and June? Great, thank you.
Madam President, no one is signed up for public forum tonight.
Oh, my. Okay, thank you. Yes, Board Member Carrillo.
And because I'm always just curious, is there anyone from the public here tonight?
Of course.
Oh, good. No, that's great, because oftentimes, you know, it's a lot of staff. So I'm always just curious as to how many public are coming to a meeting at any given time. Thank you.
I don't see anyone here for union update. Is there? I don't see Grace. Oh, okay. So, no union update. We move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
And do I have a second? Second. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Board Member Carrillo.
Do you have,
Yeah.
are you going to do the library?
Yeah.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Someone else is going to do an item F, but on contracts over 50, I'm not sure if people noticed, but if you want to drive down Llano Street, the wrecking ball has started on the Llano Street campus where De Vargas was and where Milagro will be when it's finished. So it's really exciting because sometimes you just see that fence go up and it's like, what the heck is going on? This is taking forever. But as we are very responsible stewards of your money, we're making sure that every piece of usable equipment in that school, every, you know, lab sink, anything that can be used is used. And so we've done that before the wrecking ball is taking its course. And just drive by there. I mean, I think it's really exciting because this is something that I think the district has been working on now probably in total like 3 years. And so now we're kind of seeing this move. And a lot of the contracts over 50, and also in summer, have to do with not only projects like this, the renovation at Capitol. So you can see all of your bond dollars at work, especially during the summer when we're making improvements to our campuses. So I always think it's a really exciting time when we have this end of July, early August, looking at all the contracts and all the progress that our district is making.
Vice President Cashman.
On letter F, the ground lease between Santa Fe Public Schools and the City of Santa Fe for the Lafarge Library, that was not available at our board review. So can we have an update before or pull it?
It's in your packet.
It's, okay, well then we need to just, before we go, we need to have a time to look at it because it was not available for us to take a look at board review, and we didn't get an email on it. Okay.
So what is your suggestion? Your suggestion is that we pull that?
Or give us a few minutes to take a look at it. Okay.
Okay, I read it earlier.
Yeah, or we could have an update from
Would
staff.
you like
but-
to have Ms. Yonda Wagner, could you please just maybe highlight?
Good evening, Board President Price, Board Members, Superintendent Garcia. I think that the highlights of the changes remain in the cover sheet provided to you. So the ground lease between Santa Fe Public Schools and the City of Santa Fe on the Llano Street land where the Lafarge Library is has been approved by the State Board of Finance with some minor language changes. They're summarized, it's a lot of legalese. They're summarized in the cover sheet, but it's basically about the appropriations of monies. And so it's the added paragraph is paragraph 42. It's a non-appropriation clause. So if you're looking for that in the executed lease directly, that's where you would look. The City Council also accepted the land lease, and they requested a clause that's in paragraph 3. So those are the two changes you would want to seek out. Paragraph 3 is a lease termination in 180 days. Okay? In paragraph 42 is the non-appropriation clause language required by the State Board of Finance. So those are the two highlights I would draw your attention to.
So then, the lease that you've given us is not updated with these changes, is that correct? Because when I look in paragraph 3, it says 120 days, and you're telling me the city council wants 180 days, so I just need a little bit of clarification.
So the lease that we're agreeing on is the 180-day notice.
And so then will we update this document to reflect that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm ready to move on with consent.
Okay. I've had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be roll call. No, it does not. It doesn't have to be roll call. All in favor?
Sure. Aye.
Yes.
It carries.
Yeah, any opposed? Just yes.
Any opposed?
Well, we should be.
Yeah, I got you.
So it's in the
Okay, so we move on to board's update and follow-up. Anything? Okay. Let's move on to the super...
Sorry, but in the
Board
future,
Member
when we
Carrillo?
make it, but in the future, when we make a change like that, I'd just like it, I mean, I had no idea until this evening, because we'd done the consent the one way for the last 7 years. So, I mean, you know, I just,
This was news to me also. And
Okay.
we're going to have a presentation from our lawyer, so
Okay.
just hold on to
just
it.
not to be blindsided, just so we keep, if we can get,
I wasn't blindsided, and you weren't blindsided. We're going to have a presentation.
well, I was blindsided,
Well,
because
I'm
I
so
had no
sorry.
idea, so.
I'm so
okay.
sorry. I apologize. Superintendent's update and follow-up.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Milagro Back to School Barbecue on Monday, August the 14th, from 5:30 to 7 p.m. We're looking forward to meeting our new Milagro community. Representatives from various departments will be there, and we hope that you can join us. The ECO, Early College Opportunities Back to School Barbecue, will be on Tuesday, August the 8th. From 5 to 6:30. I will be unable to attend. I will be out of state attending the Aspen Institute. Yes, 5 to 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, August the 8th. An opportunity to meet the new teachers and leaders to explore the career-connected, hands-on learning programs that make our school unique. The Opportunity Santa Fe Volunteer Fair will be August the 19th at Sweeney from 11 to 2 p.m. This fair will share opportunities to volunteer with many youth-centered organizations in Santa Fe, and of course, we want to highlight the Santa Fe Public Schools. Back to School Bash, and I'll probably be repeating this on several occasions, September 23rd at Franklin Miles Park from 11 to 2 p.m. This event celebrates our students, our educators, our schools, and partnership with the community. Again, September 23rd, Franklin Miles Park from 11 to 2 p.m.
I'm sorry. Could you, Back to Schools Bash is the
September
23rd?
23rd
Yeah,
at Franklin Miles Park from 11 to 2 p.m.
11 to 2. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And then we will be presenting to the board highlights and a presentation regarding park scores. And what I want to just highlight is that in English language arts, some of our schools saw increases as high as 10 percentage points. Currently, the percentage of Santa Fe Public Schools students who met or exceeded expectations in 3rd, 4th, 6th, and 9th grade in ELA exceeded the state average. Our growth for 1 year in ELA was 2.6 percentage points, whereas the state average was 1%. It looked different because they were showing 3 years of data. Math stayed pretty flat, but we're encouraged by some areas of growth. Just want to highlight a few of our schools very quickly. These are schools that met or exceeded expectations in both English language arts and math. Capital High School saw 6.3 percentage points in ELA, math 2. So the first number I'm going to read is ELA, second one will be math, okay? Cesar Chavez, plus 5.9 and 4.1. Chaparral, plus 8.9 and plus 3.1. De Vargas, 0.4. Math was 3.8. Gonzalez, 3.2. 3.6. Kearney, 2.3. 1. Mandela, 13.6. 11. Nava, 10 and 5.3. Ortiz, 1.9. 0.8. Piñon, 7.4. 1.2. Ramirez Thomas, 8.1, 2.3. Santa Fe High School, 8 and 1.1. Sweeney, 0.1 and 2.1. It was just really exciting to see that. Other notable accomplishments were Atalaya Elementary increased the percentage of students who met or exceeded expectations in math by 12.2%. Mandela and Nava made double-digit gains in the percentages of students who met or exceeded expectations on the English Language Arts Assessment by 13.6% and 10% respectively. Really going to be looking at the schools and looking at what kinds of things they did that we can, again, replicate. We had a game plan for last year. We executed it. This year, we're doing that in addition. So we're talking about, looking at how we improve our instruction 2.0 next year. We didn't focus on the PARC and the test scores. We focused on teaching and learning, and we think the outcomes, speak for themselves. So we're really excited about next year and looking forward to giving you a more comprehensive report after the school grades are released. And that concludes my announcements.
Thank you. Let's move on to presentations. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand. I'm sorry. Board Member Carrillo.
So on Park, when we end up getting the report that we're going to get, and I know that we all know this, but as part of the presentation, would you be able to include some of the obstacles and challenges that our student faced that also affected some of these scores, like computers going down? There were so many things that happen. Because remember I just think the public needs to know sometimes why some of these things happen and why these kids aren't getting the scores that the public may expect of them. And I know that there are. Okay, but yeah. Please. And then you didn't mention Acequia Madre. But they scored one of the highest, probably, right? Weren't they like 75%?
I don't have their scores in front of me, but we will share. We were talking about gains,
Right.
and then we'll give you the comprehensive report on how Acequia did this year.
And the reason I just mentioned that is because, we talk about the plan that we made, and, Acequia has a big emphasis on art and music. And so my own feeling is that when you're educating the whole child, you make school fun by including art and music, they spend an inordinate amount of time on art and music. Obviously, that hasn't taken away from their academics. So maybe that's something we can learn in the rest of the district as best practice. And the other question I have is, do we expect the A to F grading that the PED is going to come up with, which is usually just malarkey? But since we've had so many schools with these kinds of gains, and that's what they basically put so much of the grade on.
Board Member Carrillo, I hope so. The problem is we don't know what cohort we're being compared to and what kind of gains that cohort made. So that's the problem in analyzing the data and trying to predict. You would think that we would see increases in school grades, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed. We should know in about another 2 weeks. Thank you, Madam President. Our first presentation will be presented by the Board Counsel, Mr. Tony Ortiz from Ortiz and Zamora. And this is on the request of Board President Price and Board Member or Board Secretary Noble. Mr. Ortiz.
Thank you, Board President Price, Superintendent Garcia, board members. I was asked to come to visit with the board about a couple of particular board processes. I want to start by saying that most of the time, board process, how you all meet, what processes you follow, tend to be a function of your norms, how you want to proceed, what your reasonable expectations of one another will be. Of course, there are some legal parameters that control some of them, and we'll talk about those, but my intention is to just touch on 3 primary areas and then take questions from you, and we go from there. So the first that I wanted to visit with you about has to do with the subject of executive session and the way you all typically agenda your executive session. This came up, I want to give some context. We were doing a brief new board member training for Board Member Noble, and Board President Price was there, and we were kind of going through some things with regard to executive session, and I was talking to them about that it's a bit unusual the way Santa Fe proceeds, because you all set your executive session at 4:30, and then you set an official meeting time at 5:30. And so the peculiar aspect of what you all do to yourselves is you box yourselves in. You say, okay, we are giving ourselves an hour. And that's all we're giving ourselves. Every other board that I work with, they simply have executive session on their agenda, either at the front end or the back end, and they take as much time as they think they need. So let's say, for example, if you wanted to set your executive session at 4:30, that's just the start, that's just your meeting time. You start your meeting at 4:30, and your first agenda item is executive session, and your regular board meeting starts. If you finish your executive session at 4:45, you start your general meeting then. If you finish your executive session at 6, you start it then. So the other peculiarity about the function and the way you all have set this up is that, again, you box yourself in. If you're talking about something important and you want to keep talking, you've now put yourself on this artificially created timeline that requires that you try to come out right at 5:30. And might even push you back into trying to meet again in executive session or reconvene into regular and then call another executive session towards the end of your meeting. So I can't tell you what to do. That's not what I'm here to do. I am simply telling you that I think you're creating some artificial limitations on your executive session timing and your regular meeting timing that I don't think you necessarily need to do. So, yes.
I can see listing an executive session as the first item on the agenda. I would not want to change the meeting time from the regular board meeting. And none of us was on this board when this format started. But I think the public has a right to know when we're going to begin the other guts of the meeting, so that they can, plan for childcare, plan for work, things like that. So I wouldn't want us to make a change there. Not sure why this is even an issue, because at least as long as I've been on the board, on those occasions where we had to stay in executive session till 5:45, 6, 6:15, even 6:30, we stayed in. I mean, if we felt like we had to stay in, we stayed in. And I imagine that's your recollection as well on those meetings, maybe, that you had to be present. Yes, we wanted to be cognitive of the public if they were out there waiting for us, but we knew full well that if there was business that needed to be finished up then, that we would do that. So And then on those occasions where, and I think we're more cognizant of keeping the public waiting now than maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And so when 5:30 is coming along and it's 5:45, then we do decide that maybe we have to go back into executive session at the end of the meeting. One of the things I think I really love about our board is the transparency of our board and our, not reaction, but our commitment to the public and making ourselves as accessible as possible. So if people are tuning in, they know when to tune in. So I don't think at this, I know you're not making a suggestion, but I guess my suggestion would be, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Well, and I certainly think that's an option, Board Member Carrillo. I mean, this is, what I am offering to you is simply that I believe you're putting some sort of artificial pressure on your need to end your executive session sooner than you may need to, or not. The flip side is, you finish at 5, and you got to sit around for a half hour and wait for the beginning of the start of your regular meeting because you've noticed it that way. And then you have people sitting around waiting for the start of the regular meeting.
Well, not people, us. And I think that that's incumbent upon us then to sit around for that half an hour and wait. I mean, if executive session is such a light agenda item, maybe there's one item, it's just, looking over the final lease, it's going to take a few minutes, and maybe if we think it's going to be that way, we schedule the executive session at 5 and not at 4:30. And if we end up having to wait because it only took 15 minutes and the meeting doesn't start, then we wait. We're public servants. We have.
This is a function of your board norms and the board majority and the wishes of the board majority. You can set your protocols and your processes as you deem fit. If you wish to leave it alone, you don't have to change a thing. If you wish to change it, then you simply start changing your agendas, as you see fit. But because this would be a break from your standard practice, if you were to adjust it, I might suggest some sort of vote with regard. You wouldn't be doing it tonight because you don't have an action item, but some sort of contemplation of a vote if that is a process that one or more of the board members wishes to debate and discuss and possibly adopt.
Board Member Carrillo?
Then I have a.
I'm sorry, I meant,
Well,
you're not
I
done.
have a
You're not
question
done.
then.
Yeah.
Is this something that we need to put in policy to make it harder for a board, 10 years from now to say that they're going to just put the public at our whim? I mean, is there something you might suggest that we put in policy, that this is how we're going to work our board meetings, or no?
I am simply concerned, and the expressed concern that I am making to you is that in some regards, there could be the argument made, I already talked to you about what happens if your executive session ends early. If you were also setting the expectation that things start promptly at 5:30, but you drag it on beyond that, I'm equally concerned about that. I would rather, the way that I see other boards do it, they set their executive session. They either set it at the end if they think it's going to be long, and they put it there, or if they put it at the front end, they go until they feel like they need to finish, and they're not setting established timelines for the public or participants as to when we come out. We come out when we finish our business. And so you are unique. That doesn't mean it's wrong, but you are unique. And so you can leave it alone if you choose, but that's a board majority function.
Vice President Cashman?
Thank you for the information. I guess I probably feel the same way as Board Member Carrillo. I don't want, if we finished early and we started right away, then we have to make all these adjustments to the agenda because people that maybe wanted to show up for public forum would be expecting to show up at a certain time, and we're already past that. I like to have the public know when there are things, when we're going to begin the meeting. And so, a few times we have recessed from executive session and then gone back in later. I'd rather do that. I understand what you're saying, but, I think, we don't have tons of people show up for public forum, but when they do, I want to start on time because I want to be courteous of their time also. And so I would rather sit and hang around and do whatever we need to do, but so the public knows we're going to begin at a certain point in time. And I think even when we've run a little bit over, we've either come out and said we're going to be out in 5 minutes, or we just say, listen, it's too much to discuss, we need to recess, and then we'll come after the regular board meeting. So, I mean, I do agree with Board Member Carrillo on this.
So, Board Member Cashman, like I said, this was raised during a training where I simply pointed out something that was a little bit unique by Santa Fe, and so the question was raised, well, if we're discussing board protocols at a meeting, this might be something you want to present to the board for them to either pick up or leave. And so if there's no momentum for it, I'm certainly not here to push it.
And I would just say, with the city different, I don't want to put it in board policy, because each board may change, but I like how we're doing it right now as a board. But I can see, just thank you for bringing that clarification.
Sure. The second issue, unless there are any other questions or concerns.
Board Member
about that one.
Trujillo?
Thank you, Board President. So, Tony, I have often wondered, because it's almost as if we're doing an executive session as a separate meeting, and then we're starting a regular meeting, which is, of course, authorized under OMA. But I wonder if we think that it's going to be longer, should we have it listed on the agenda under the regular meeting at the end in order to cover all of our bases?
I actually think that would be a good idea. You're talking about a spillover second
Uh-huh.
executive session.
Correct.
I actually think it's a good idea.
Okay.
Because, if you are coming back out with at least some likelihood of your going back in, I certainly don't think it would hurt.
Yeah.
It's belt and suspenders.
So, Board President, I would...
Belt and suspenders?
Yes, an abundance of caution.
An abundance of caution.
Board President, I would suggest that if you, as a board president, and the superintendent have an idea that the executive session is going to last longer, I think you usually have a pretty good idea. I do think that we should add it to the end of the agenda before adjournment, if we think we may go back into that with the same language, I guess.
As a default, you could list it twice.
Yeah.
I mean, as a default, you could simply list it twice.
And we don't have to go into executive session if it's in there later, but at least it leaves the option if you think that there's any possibility that it spills over. Thank you, Tony.
And one of the other things, and these are just things that lawyers sit around and think about. No, but it's one of these, the issue about the start time is also a bit of a concern to me, because part of the issue, we were talking about, I'm sorry, I have a tendency to hate to stand beside behind these things. Can you hear me okay? Looks like your green light's on. So one of the issues that I was concerned about, although I don't think you would field a complaint over this, or that the AG frankly would care, but the issue of listing your start time for your open meeting at 5:30 and then you don't do it. Do you follow me? You go long. You go long in your executive, and then you don't start till 6:15. If somebody wanted to make hay about it, technically, is it a violation? Maybe. Maybe not a real material one, but still, if somebody said, hey, I showed up at 5:30, and now I can hear myself. I showed up at 5:30, and there was nobody there, and it says start time 5:30. And so that's sort of the artificial nature of my concern here, is that you all are looking at your calendar and you're going, holy smoke, it's only almost 5:30 and we got to get out of here, and you're doing your best. And I've been in these executive sessions where you're putting pressure on yourself to get out here on time. That's one. And two, do I really think something's going to happen to you, that somebody's going to complain if you go till 5:45, 6 o'clock, 6:15? I don't know. Some people have a lot of time on their hands and would complain about something like that. So I might say to you, that is a reasonable concern. If you're not starting on time, somebody might say you're violating OMA. And so I think that ought to be in the cards as you think about these issues as well. One of the possible fixes is you put a spillover and you finish at 5:30, and if you got to go longer, you come on back. But I think if you're going to so let me put it to you this way. For your agenda items, you don't put time, like, okay, we're going to start, Roman numeral 2 at 5:40 and Roman numeral 3 at, 5:45. You don't do that to yourself on any other part of the agenda, because you can't really hold yourself to those things. So all I'm suggesting is some flexibility. Board Member Trujillo's suggestion is an option. moving your executive session just to the end in general, I don't really like that, because if you have some things you need to talk about for your action items, it doesn't work that well. But think about the flexibility that you may have. Slap something on the end if you need to, or take the time limitation, the time start off of your general meeting time might be another option. So those are all there. We can help you if you decide you want some motions with regard to how you adjust your protocols. I'm not necessarily suggesting that you need a board policy. You could simply do it by adoption of a board norm, so that you know what to expect and nobody feels surprised by it. Does that make sense?
I just want to say I'm not in favor of tying a board 10 years from now to a process that we decided is best for us now. Board Member Carrillo.
I'd reiterate that if it isn't broke, don't fix it, and I think Linda's idea is fine. If we're trying to get out here at 5:30 and, we can always have the very last item be there if we think it's going to be a heavy agenda. And just in terms of just the whole nature of why we're discussing this, it would stand to reason that we have an agenda with certain items in a certain order for a reason. And my understanding from our former council is if people see that there's an action item and it's action item F, they know it's going to be later in the meeting, they may come later in the meeting. They're not going to come at 5:30 or 6:30. And so we've been told in the past that, no, you don't move item F to item A, because the public has an expectation of when they can expect to see different things. So I'm not even sure why we've just spent 15 minutes on this. In 6.5 years, and even when we have run over, and I remember there were some issues, especially when we had the former superintendent, there were times we didn't get out here till 6:30, 6:45. Nobody went to the AG's office. So I just think that's a red herring. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think it's working fine. I understand that Kate may have had the question, and maybe that's something you guys could have worked on offline as opposed to having this be on the agenda, but those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. And if the board wishes to undertake any motions, like I said, you don't have to adopt anything in policy if you decide to act. It can simply be assertion of a board norm via motion for this board, for this currently constituted board. The second issue that I was asked to at least briefly discuss was roll calls and roll call votes. Again, there are very few instances in which that type of roll call, specifically a roll call, is required. We do have them associated with votes going into executive session. Typically, we recommend that for anything that you might consider high profile or something that you would want a record of. I would tell you, say, for example, financial votes might be something that you may want a roll call on, but again, these are board norm kinds of things. What do you want a specific record of, particular board member votes on? Again, those are how you decide you want to go. There are very few instances in which roll call is required by law. So if you decide, hey, we want to do it for votes on contracts, again, the board can decide it wants to do it that way. We want to do it with regard to anything involving adoption of a board policy, and you want to do a roll call. You all have to decide that. So these are all processes and procedures that you can decide on your own. I don't think there's any rocket science to that. You decide which process you want to follow. You decide on a motion. You let us know. We can help you with the motion language and put it on the next agenda. That's all I have on that, unless there are questions. Yes.
Vice President Cashman?
I think we know the answer to this, but we get confused each time. When we come out of executive session, there is no requirement to have a roll call vote. We roll call into executive session, but when we come out,
It's not required.
Okay.
Going in, yes. Coming out, no.
Board Member Carrillo.
I'm sorry, but I again have to ask, why is this here? Because it seems like on really important issues, one of us requests a roll call. So now that you're bringing this up, does it just take one board member to request a roll call to have a roll call, or can others say, I don't want a roll call?
It really is the prerogative of the board president who is conducting the vote, but I say that because you all don't have you don't have an established system right now. So if you had.
Yeah, we do. When somebody wants a roll call, I mean, it's not written down or anything, but somebody wants a roll call, we have a roll call. On like on the vote on Milagro, or the vote on, the bond, or, anything.
I've never rejected a roll call when it was
No, you never have.
requested.
No, you never have.
But I also don't think we should have it if we don't need it.
So what I would say to you, and Board Member Carrillo, what I was referring to is that if that's the protocol and the norm that the board wants to adopt, we'll simply, quick motion that says, if a board, that's going to be the norm of this board. If a single board member requests a roll call vote, that'll be enough for the board to proceed that way. Otherwise, it's the prerogative of the president. You simply adopt it as a standard practice so that you all know what to expect of one another, so that you don't have arguments over, should you or should you not, or do I have to or do I not have to. You simply have a process and procedure that you all adopt. It's that
Because
simple.
as you remember, Board Member Vice President Cashman had a resolution, and it looked like it was going to be a tight vote, and so I decided, and no one objected to that we would have a roll call vote, and we did. Board Member Trujillo.
Thank you, and Tony, I do appreciate you being here, just to clarify this, because so often we just do things because that's how we've always done it. The OMA does require, though, that any vote, that your minutes include how each member voted. So unless everybody votes unanimously, then our minutes do need to reflect who voted for and who voted against that.
And I think it says a lot about this board that we've only had roll calls when that was going to be obvious the case, and almost always we have unanimous votes. I think that says a lot about us, too.
Yes, Board Member Cashman.
Vice President Cashman.
And so, we just, like, when we went ahead to approve the agenda, if we take a unanimous vote, do we also have to say, and are there any opposed? Yeah, when we say, I just think that's technically, we should do that, so it's just, yeah, okay, so I just want to clarify it.
That's just my problem. I sometimes, when we all agree, I forget to say, and the invisible person who opposes. Board Member Trujillo.
Thank you, Board President. And in some cases, I've seen it at the legislature and I've seen it at other boards, and I kind of am moving in that direction. They'll just ask, is there any opposition? And if there's no opposition, then the motion passes. So you could do it, those in favor, those against, or you could even say, is there any opposition? And with no opposition, the motion passes unanimously.
And you can do that as well.
It's a backwards way of doing it, but you
Right.
can do it.
You can do it that way. Either way, it needs to be, Board Member Cashman's point is well taken, which is that if she says, if there's a statement by the board president says all those in favor, and everybody sounds like they say yay, and but there's somebody who, maybe you mishear it, and you don't call for any opposed. It's just for clarity of your minutes. It's a good idea. It's a good
And
idea.
I have Vice President Cashman here who pokes me, reminds me. Board Member Carrillo. Thank you, by the way.
I don't mean to sound flippant, but is the next item going to be like this? I'm wondering if, do you guys all want to walk it in procession? Since I sit here, I walk out first, and then you, and then you, and then you. Because I imagine they do that in some judges' chambers. I don't know, this to me, honestly, so far, I don't, this could have been done over lunch with Kate. I don't understand this.
Well, it's happening.
I don't understand why.
This is, when I was growing up, this is called a happening.
I do not understand this happening. I just don't. And it's all good. I think, again, if it ain't broke, don't did you work for the government in another life? I'm just kidding with you, Tony. Tony and I are buds, so I know you.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I also want you to know, this wasn't all raised by Kate.
Okay.
She raised only the issue of the executive session and the planning of that, and she had some concerns about Open Meetings Act issues as well, so I thought they were relevant questions, and then they came back to me and said, it's probably a good topic for the entire board to hear about. And then while we're doing it, let's talk about roll call, whether there are issues that we need to address in roll call. Last thing has to do with the issue of board discussion and planning, which is also a fun one that we see a lot of boards make mistakes on. I am not, you all have on tonight's agenda board discussion, and I think the point of board discussion is for you all just to make, and the point I want to make to you under board discussion is that board discussion is never designed to be a free-for-all. I think that that has been stated multiple times, because if you start going outside of the listed agenda items under board discussion, it's an OMA violation. It is. You have an agenda that you're not supposed to be talking about it. It's that simple. So as long as you stay within those parameters, and then I see you have a separate agenda action for SFPS events. I think that's fine, which is just things that are coming up. And then under board discussion, certainly it's an opportunity for you all to talk about, well, and you have an advanced planning session there as well. So as long as you kind of keep your board discussion to the listed items and it doesn't turn into discussion of 10 other items not in your agenda, I think you'll be fine. Yes?
I have a question.
Okay.
When we get to advanced planning, sometimes what we do is we may cancel a study session. Can we do that?
Sure.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we were all right with that.
Yes, because I mean, that's what it's there for, is for you all to say, yes, I can, or no, I can't, and take it off of, or even add to. Well, I mean, you've got these things listed here in terms of advanced planning. I think that under advanced planning, certainly, if there are, at least at this point, unknown issues that you have not yet been able to put on the calendar, I think it's also an opportunity, if you list it there, to say, oh yes, and look, we have something else planned on, forgot to mention 9/28. There's an event planned as well. Make sure to add that to your calendars. That's all you're doing, is looking at these things and trying to mark them out for people. So.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Other comments? Board Member Carrillo and then Vice President Cashman.
Board discussion. There seems to be a lot of gray here. At least when I was at a city council meeting on Wednesday night, which actually I understand was one of the more civil meetings lately, because I was expecting it to be, given certain people in our community, quite a happening. It was very civil, which was nice. But there was an item on their agenda, and it said items from the governing body. And then Maestas, Councilor Maestas just started talking about something that was important to him and wasn't listed. He didn't have it. It was just items from the governing body. And I was looking at that thinking that's the same as our board discussion. And there was back and forth between Councilor Maestas and staff. Why, we're told no. Clearly that seemed like it was board discussion, but it was at a council meeting.
So if you're asking me,
How are they different?
If you were asking me, if I was asked if that was the correct way to proceed, I would say no. So, and
Well,
if
they have
you
a city
ask- and if
attorney
you-
and they've,
And
you
if
know.
you ask me if they're risking an AG complaint, my answer would be yes. So
Okay.
I'm really not interested in whether or not other people are doing things right. I'm interested in whether this board. and the
Unless it
board-
has to do with executive session. I'm just kidding with you.
Whether or not the boards that I advise are doing things in compliance with the law.
I understand. Oh, it just struck me as odd because I hadn't been to a council meeting in a really long time, and I saw that there. Now, and I think we should, well, it's not on board discussion tonight, but one of the things we talked about, since you're bringing up board discussion, and it was the idea of moving board discussion to maybe after public forum so that actually the public someday could actually hear us discuss.
But just remember, we have a norm that Carl Grumler reads that says, "We will not make public comment on what is said in public forum."
Then maybe the agenda item reads, comment on public forum. I don't know. It just seems like, I mean, even the board discussion items that we have here, usually everybody's left by then. And sometimes I think people can really see who we are and those things we really believe in, and unfortunately, sometimes it's after 10 o'clock. So it's something to consider.
Yeah, I think where you put board discussion on your agenda is really up to you. That's not my concern. I'm more interested in that you get items A, B, C, and D, the things you want to talk about, listed on the agenda in advance so the public knows that that's what you're going to be talking about. So, that's it.
Vice President Cashman, and then Board Member Trujillo.
Okay, so I probably violate board discussion quite a bit. If public has come and said something during public forum, and we want to talk about it, I want to talk about it at that time. You know, they're here, instead of saying, well, we'll get to your item in 2 weeks. So how do we, and then if something comes up in Union Update, I want to talk about what they've said to us, not I'm postponing it. I might have short-term memory and forget about what my issue was, you know. So how do, I mean, I'd like to say, and anything else the board would like to discuss. I mean, because we don't get to talk about this stuff except for when we're all here together, and some of the things. So how do we? And I know I know what you're going to tell me from a legal standpoint.
You're not going to like my answer.
I'm not going to like your answer, but it just seems like if people come and they talk to us, and then to be silent on the issue, I think is not a good. Well, it's rude. It's like you don't care enough about my issue to talk about it. I took time out of my day to come here. So how do we get around that? Or if something comes up between the time we've published this, and it might be time sensitive, how do we get those things so we can talk about it as a board? I mean, I understand the purpose, and I know what you're going to tell me, but I'm just verbalizing, board discussion I feel pretty frustrated with.
Okay, so I want to start with the baseline expectation that the public has the right to know with 72 hours advance notice of every subject of public importance that this board is going to be discussing at its public meeting. So we start with that expectation that you all aren't supposed to be talking about anything that you haven't told the public about 72 hours in advance, and that's the obligation of this board, okay? The people who come here and participate in public comment, they can get up here and they say whatever they want. They talk about, a new issue that came up, and unfortunately, there are two concepts going on. I'm always reluctant to tell a board that I think you should be responding off the cuff to someone who shows up at public comment and makes a comment about something in the district, and you want to respond and be responsive. You might not have given Dr. Garcia an opportunity to be responsive to that. She may know something about it. She may need to talk to her principal about it. There may need to be a process by which that concern or complaint is dealt with appropriately before it even bubbles up to the board. You might not be the right forum for that complaint or the right person to be responding. So that's my initial concern about responding. The other piece is, if somebody's got an axe to grind, something with the district, and you're giving quotable quotes or making statements about the district's position, or representing some action that the district may or may not have taken, it may have liability implications as well. So what I would say to you, as painful as it may be, you thank people for their comments. You say, I certainly think you can say things like, thank you for your comments. We plan to be responsive. Dr. Garcia, did you hear that? Can you follow up? Can you meet with Ms. So-and-so after the meeting, make sure that she has the right people to talk? You can do that so that you are responsive. If you still feel 3 weeks later, 2 weeks later, like, and Dr. Garcia's had a chance to do what she needed to do, and it's still a percolating issue, you've got 72 hours to add it to your, advance notice to add it to your next agenda. And so I know it's painful, but the way the law is structured is you can't just stick it on board discussion at the end of the meeting because somebody else raised it. The rest of the public didn't know you were going to be talking about their issue. And that's the OMA violation. So best I can do is say, do the best you can to get everything you want on there 72 hours in advance. So,
Board Member Trujillo and then Board Member Carrillo.
Thank you, Board President. So, Tony, I missed the opportunity to just sit around and have these long, academic discussions with you. And I have always believed exactly what you're saying. The challenge that I'm having and the heartburn and pain is that there are different attorneys who provide advice to boards particularly at the law conference that most of us aren't allowed to come to.
Don't get
Just a
started.
personal issue. So this is my challenge. The law actually says, meeting notices shall include an agenda containing a list of specific items of business to be discussed or transacted at the meeting, or information on how to get an agenda. Now that seems really clear cut, right?
Right.
Like black law, right? You know exactly what it says. But in the guide, you go down to the next page, and the Attorney General's guide is conflicting with that. And it does say that a public body may discuss a matter but cannot take action unless the matter is listed as a specific item of business on the agenda. Action on items that are not listed on the agenda for a meeting must be taken at a subsequent special or regular meeting. And then they go on to discuss an example 25 about a domestic water user board who meets, and they have just that discussion about something that comes up in public comment. But I think they're wrong.
I think that's wrong too.
I think they're wrong.
And I will tell you, there are various aspects of how you might get kicked on things like this. The AG is one of them. I will tell you, Fogg's interpretation would not go
Would not
along
meet that, does it?
would not go along with that
And
interpretation.
I just had lunch with their executive director today.
Yeah, and so we try to be aware and ahead of, and frankly, I will tell you, I think my advice is designed to be conservative.
I think so.
You know, there is always, and God knows I've said this to board members before, you can ignore me. It's always your prerogative. You can ignore me and do what you want and see if it results in a complaint, but I don't think it's the right way to proceed. And I actually, in this case, considering the public policy of the Open Meetings Act, which is to give the public a fair opportunity, let's say that you get people up here and you get 10 people who raise 10 different substantial issues about the school district, curriculum and some new policy and something involving the superintendent and all kinds of meaty big things, and there's 10 people and they come up and each of them makes a comment about one of those things. Have you just opened the door? Under that philosophy, you've just opened the door to have a meeting about 10 really significant things that the public had no idea you were going to be discussing. So if transparency is a concern, that would be a concern for me. And this board meets enough. You have enough special meetings, work sessions. Wouldn't be that hard to stick it on the next agenda within a week and a half, and let the people know. I am very much in favor of letting Dr. Garcia's competent and helpful administrative team deal with things. I have a lot of concern about board members putting themselves into the middle of issues and concerns that really, frankly, belong to the day-to-day operations of the district, and that's the other concern I have, Board Member Cashman. So,
Board Member Carrillo?
So did I just hear you read, because I'm pretty sure I did, that may discuss but not take action, right? And when you, as I heard you correctly, it's the part about may discuss that's the gray. Is that right?
Well, actually, I think it's the advice, because the may discuss is the Attorney General's compliance guide advice. But the law that's right up above that says that you have to put items that you're going to discuss or take action on your agenda. So in my mind, it is a complete conflict of what the law says. In the Attorney General's opinion, I mean, Tony spelled it out. I just wanted to point it out because this is where the confusion is that people are being told different things. And quite honestly, the Attorney General's office, I think, needs to fix this, because I agree, I think they're saying the wrong thing based upon the clear language of the law.
and I will tell you, we are seeing a substantial amount of activity by some newspapers within the state. I mentioned Fogg, certainly, but some newspapers in the state that are holding, and this is very nearby, holding school boards to the letter of the law, sending threat letters about you didn't comply with your agenda, you didn't get it out on time, this isn't specific enough. you know, you're going beyond the scope of your agenda. We are seeing those lawsuits. You guys are just, you know, I don't know, you're saying your prayers or something, but those have not been coming your way, but they've been hitting other school districts in the area, and I
But
want
it's
you to know
not
that.
coming our way because of
Because
lack of
because we know what we're
conflict at this
doing.
moment. No, because lack of comment at this.
And I'm not
moment.
done.
Conflict,
Board Member
sorry.
Trio finish, please.
No, it's just, I think it's not coming our way because it comes other districts' ways, not because they're following or not following, but because they're addressing conflict, and somebody who doesn't like the conflict they're addressing, that's the easiest thing to do.
Easy pickings.
That
If-
is.
If somebody's mad at one of you, easy pickings. If the board goes sideways or any way incorrect on an OMA issue, easy pickings. So I suggest you play it straight, you know, go with the conservative interpretation of OMA on board discussion, and that's my recommendation. It'll serve you well.
Board Member Carrillo, and then if it pleases the board, I'd like to move on.
All right, couple things. Generally, we know when we're going to have, first off, I think on the whole, we handle things really well. We're not some of these other districts where people may have it in for us because we didn't hire their brother-in-law or whatever may have happened. And I think that we can easily say we're probably the most transparent district in the state of the 89. And I mean that, of all 89. And we do run, I mean, every one of us has run good meetings, and we're very careful about all of this. But I'm very cognizant as well, and I agree with Maureen, that when someone comes up and there are issues, we generally know. You know when there's, 30 people or 50 from the public and not 11, or whatever it might be, and we know when there's going to be an issue where there's a lot of public forum. So perhaps what we could do is, under board discussion, we can, anticipating what's, at least some of the items being brought up, not, the 10 people who each have an axe to grind, but things that we may know in advance, we can put them on board discussion. So then we will be able to comment.
But it has to be 72 hours before.
Well, yeah, it'll be, like even at board review, one of us would say, you know something? I know that there's at least 9 people coming to the meeting to talk on this issue, and I know that we should probably bring this up during board discussion. Please put this on with my name next to it, or whatever it might be.
Steve, I think that's a good suggestion.
Great, thank you. And then, but we also can, we have always, and I think we've done this very well as a board, when someone has an issue, it's like, whether it was a special ed at NI, or there was the woman that brought up the discrimination with regards to the dress code, how, men could show their midriff, men could do this, men could do that, but women are shamed. God forbid they should look sexual in any way. Or we sexualize them, it's not that they're looking sexual, right? So the person brought... What? Thank you. So the parent brought that up, and so we did say, something, you can bet that we're going to discuss this as a board, and it'll be on in 2 weeks, or we're going to discuss it maybe just for a moment or two in the meeting at the board discussion. But we haven't had long drawn-outs for a really long time, and because we've been putting our names next to issues. So would something like that help with your concern, Maureen, in terms of if we anticipate?
I think we do try to anticipate, but still, sometimes a member of the public comes and you're like, oh my gosh. And I understand what you're saying. I understand technically, legally, but, this is an emotional thing that I'm saying. And I know you don't want, and I understand we don't want to get the school district in liability or trouble, but, it's just like, well, then when something comes up, I want to meet the next day so we can discuss it. I got you.
But that's when the superintendent has always said, something, thanks for bringing that up. I had no idea that was going on, and you're going to talk to staff. And we've always handled it that way. So, and I still think it's kind of gray. I hear that you want it to be fixed. Totally get that. The attorney and you, right? Want it black and white. Okay.
And Steve, Board Member Carrillo, I have a hard time calling you Board Member Carrillo. I can't emphasize enough to you in terms of proper board superintendent roles and relationships that, especially if it touches on something that she's supposed to fix and deal with, you really don't want to be injecting, okay, the board thinks this and I think this, and you got to let it bubble up through the process. It may be something that can be addressed at the principal level. And you really got to let it bubble up through the process before it reaches you all, if that's the proper structure. And so it's also buying some time to find out which avenue these issues ought to be addressed and through which they should be addressed.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
I appreciate your time. Thank you, board members.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Dr. Tom Ryan will be presenting the first report to you of school opening dashboard. So, Dr. Ryan.
Board Chair, members of the board, and Superintendent Garcia, we're going to review the school opening dashboard that we've created. This is not a new thing for Santa Fe Public School. It's a bright spot that they've had for several years, and we're going to go, I'll go quickly through this and take any questions as you see fit. We created the process of having a way to monitor not only staffing, HR issues, but also principal readiness, as well as departmental technology, facilities, etc., and their readiness for the start of the school, and also safety. And we put that into a dashboard. The comes in two different types of looks. One is the checklist and dashboard that will have the things I just mentioned, and we also keep track of our school scheduling. We want to know how much our enrollment is, does it match the projections that we had the year before, what schools may be over or under, so that we are able to pivot and make changes necessary as they come. This is a look at the sheet that each principal gets. You'll see that at the bottom there's a tab for each one of the schools. We mark the areas red, yellow, and green depending on whether they're ready or not ready. The yellow typically represents an area that we're not ready, but there's a plan of action so that we will be ready, but we don't want to mark it green until it's done. These roll up to the report that you see here and you have in your packet so that we can see all the schools across and all the schools down. This is the first one for this year. You can see it's as of August 1st, so it was generated this morning, and there are two, the first part was the hiring and staffing. The second part is more of the departmental, safety, instructional materials, IT readiness, and facilities. As I said, the dashboard has the color coding, and it represents the key departments for district readiness. The second report is on scheduling, and this gives you a look at each school, what we projected. We also have on here our enrollment from last year, and we keep track of this from week to week also. I do want to point out that this is a report that comes from our student information system. There are people that move over the summer or go to a charter or private and may not have come out of our school district. Those students will remain on our rolls for 10 consecutive days, or at least 5 attempts from the high school before they can be removed from that list. In summary, the monitor helps the departments to react for the needs of the school, gives a opportunity for the schools to identify that they also concur that there's an issue or the plan for it to be fixed is being done, and that allows us to get a plan of action prior to a crisis happening on our campuses. And with that, I'll take any questions that you may have.
Board Member Creo, and then Vice President Cashman.
Tom, on slide 6, is the assumption correct that where we see all those zeros on a school, it's because maybe they haven't reported?
Yeah, the principals have
Excuse me, Dr. Ryan, do you mind putting slides? Dr. Ryan, do you mind putting slide 6 back on the screen for those that are watching in relation to Board Member Carrillo's question? Thank you.
President Price, Board Member Carrillo, and Superintendent. The ones that are blank, those have not been filled out by the principal yet. Principals have just come back this week, and this is our first report.
And so where there's a 0, they have filled it up?
The 0, if you're looking at the total column on the left.
Well, for instance, I'm looking at Villaragorte, Engage, Mandela, Ortiz, where
Yes.
there's just, in the top portion, where there's just,
Yes, those are typically, those are the school districts that are under construction right now, so they're not correct. Is that, Ms. Yonda, is that?
oh, okay. Because I know where the Ortiz is under construction for Sky, but for anything else? Okay. All right, thanks.
Board Member Cashman? Oh, Vice President
Yeah,
Cashman?
that's fine. This is really for the superintendent. Obviously, you're just as concerned as we are about vacancies, and we're hopeful that we'll have permanent employees by August 16th when schools open. But in case that's not happening, have we gone ahead and reached out to long-term subs and got a plan so every one of our classrooms opens with a certified employee in them?
So I have an answer, but I see our Human Resources Director seeming to want to speak, so I'm going to see what he has to say. Go ahead, Mr. Frescas.
President Price, Superintendent Garcia, members of the board, that's actually our Plan B. That's normally what we do every year. Our goal ultimately is to fill every position with a licensed professional. So again, we haven't started to make that shift, but we have started looking at what our next steps are going to be in regards to having to do that if need be. But again, our priority right now is getting licensed folks into those classrooms.
But we will be reaching out. And we also, we need to, and you can see where we are with the schools, so we're getting very close. Like for example, what does Gonzalez show? Can you look at Gonzalez real quick on vacancies?
Actually,
Where are you on that one? Just as an example. This is slide 5. Can you look at that, Tom? Can you tell me?
That's one of the principals didn't fill.
Oh, he did not, but
I
anyway,
have data
I know.
on that information, actually.
Well, my point was, and I didn't know, I mean, I'm just using that as an example because I just spoke to the principal today. And he said, I'm down to 1 vacancy and I have the offer. It's just pending and processing. So some of these are in process. We have what, 11? You have 11 offers pending?
Yes, as
Mr.
of 5
Frescas?
o'clock today.
So they really have been working hard at that. I also like to reach out to, those who have retired, have been out for a year, to try to get them to come back. I think that Mr. Gephardt is looking at targeting those Facebook posts, first of all, here in Santa Fe, to see that, we have people in our area that have recently retired that may want to come back. So I feel, we're taking a multi-pronged approach to this issue. We'll keep you posted. They've been providing me a report daily, which I try to get out to you, but then I get busy and I don't get it out to you every day. But I will keep you posted on it. This is something that we're all watching very, very closely. And as I said, on the admin side, we just have that 1 vacancy. I feel good that we have filled all of those, especially the schools. It's the last thing we want is the school not to have a principal or an assistant principal. But it is a priority that we have people the first day of school. We don't want to rely on long-term subs. So we're going to work as hard as we can to move this forward.
Thank you.
Board Member Carrillo, oh, I'm sorry.
Could I just follow up on that before Board Member Carrillo begins? If we do have to hire long-term subs, can we please bring them back a few days early and pay them if that's appropriate, then so those classrooms are ready to go. I know that long-term subs in the past have come back and they haven't been paid, and they just come back and said, okay, I'm going to do what I need to do. And so if we need to bring them back a few days early, so those classrooms are pristine and welcoming.
Madam President, if I may, Vice President Cashman, a long-term sub versus just a sub that we're hiring for a few days is like the teacher of record. So, Mr. Grandler, I don't think there's any policy that prohibits them from starting when the teacher contract starts so that they can get the classroom in order, correct? I don't see why we couldn't. So I think, Mr. Frescas, we need to work with the principals, and in those, let's just say that it's a special ed teacher or a English as a second language teacher or a STEM teacher that are hard to hire, that we ensure that they start with when the teacher contract would begin so that they can get the classroom in order. We also have a cadre of volunteers, so I believe Mr. Gephardt's office could also be coordinating to see if there's some volunteers that can also help, and I know that there's been offers to help set up classrooms because many of our volunteers are retired teachers. And so we'll again take a multi-pronged approach to ensure that we have a good start of school for our kids.
Board Member Carrillo?
For you, Mr. Fresquez, would you say that the number one issue when we're trying to recruit is money?
Madam President, Superintendent Garcia, members of the board, Board Member Carrillo, based on what we've seen, at least you mentioned a little bit about exit interviews, at least from the first run of exit interviews that we presented to the board, that seems to be the number one factor outside of the evaluation process, which has been very controversial.
Okay, and I just wanted to, you know, for anyone that doesn't work with the district, but people that are watching perhaps, just wanted it on the record. It's like the surrounding states all start their teachers at $10,000 more. And Santa Fe is an expensive place to live. You know, so we got to get with the program, or we're always, not always, but we're going to often miss out, no matter how beautiful y'all and how great that video was. You know, people need to make a living.
Right, and I think one of the biggest mistakes that I say we collectively, the legislature, the executive, on three-tier licensure was because we moved up to like 37th in the country at that time, but we didn't index it. So whatever kind of new minimum salary, you know, is created, it has to be indexed because that one was done in 2002.
Thank you very much for that presentation.
I also wanted to give kudos also, and she's going to probably kick me, Ms. Lori Lehman over here. This is also her baby, and she's worked on that considerably, so I want to thank her for her work on this as well. Thank you, Lori. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ryan. Would you like me to move on? Yes. So our next presentation, I'm going to first kick it off to our Deputy Superintendent, Linda Sink, who will kick off this presentation. This is, I'm very excited about the work that staff did on this. I also want to recognize Christy Yonda-Wagner, who also helped us with this effort. One of the things you're going to be seeing more this year from us is a lot more cross-functional teaming. So you might say, well, why did Christy work on that? She's the operations officer. We're doing a lot of that where people have expertise or an interest, or it's a kind of a downtime in their department where they can pick up and help. And it also helps with building cross-functional capacity in the district. So, Christy, thanks for your efforts in that regard. And Ms. Sink, go ahead.
President Price, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia, I'm very proud to announce that the Director of Student Wellness has taken this whole past year to rebuild and rewrite the Code of Conduct. She did have a really competent team helping her do this work, but it was a lot of work. And then, as Dr. Garcia mentioned, we had some folks such as Christy help with editing and rewriting some. I know that I spent some time on it, and she had different people helping with different parts of it. But at the end of the day, I just want to commend her publicly for spearheading this, and it was just hours and hours of her work, and I think it just became her baby, if you will. So I just want to thank her for that, and we'll have her discuss kind of the bigger details of the Code of Conduct for you.
Thank you very much. Board President Price, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia, Cabinet, members of the audience. I'm here this evening, as Linda said, to present our district's 2017-18 Code of Conduct. And my plan is really to speak to its importance and also the process that we use to create the document, as well as some of the highlights. It's probably impossible to go over the entire document tonight, so that's not what I'm intending to do. So I'm driving this, right? Okay. So why do we need a district code of conduct? And I thought a lot about this when I was preparing the presentation, because it's so easy to say, here's a document that we're going to follow, when really I was thinking about how the code of conduct really is a foundation for the work that we do to establish the classrooms that we want to see, so that we have quality teaching and learning happening in the classroom. And we don't always think about that when we think of the code of conduct, but it's so important. It's that foundation. It's the beginning steps that we use to define why and what we expect our students to do, how we expect them to behave. The other important aspect of the code of conduct, and why it's so important and why we need one at the district level, is to give principals a clear guidance. Something that principals shared with me that we had years ago was a code of conduct that was comprehensive, that really helped them to respond to behaviors when expectations really weren't met. And to that end, really this district code of conduct, what it does, it provides a certain level of consistency across the district, which is what we really want. The code of conduct is a framework, really, in itself, but what it does is it gives principals options within the range of responses to discipline that is consistent, can be consistent school to school, and that is so important. The other piece that I often think about with the code of conduct is that the district code of conduct can't stand alone. So schools have to establish school rules, classroom rules, all of which support the overall picture. And part of the work that we're going to do with the principals in the retreat in the next day or two is to help them work through that and also implement positive behavior supports for schools and structures. So the code of conduct is not just about responding to discipline, but also how do we help students in changing behavior. That's really what we want. The development of the code of conduct, the committee decided not to start from scratch. We actually resurrected, if you will, the code of conduct that existed in this district several years ago, and we used that as a baseline. Because it was so comprehensive, it was good. It was a really good document. Principals used it, and we had, it worked. So we used the code of conduct as a baseline, but we soon realized that language was outdated, technology terms were outdated. Sometimes we got a good laugh around that, but certainly it was a good starting point for us. I had over 20 people come to the committee meetings, some more than others. We started in August, so this is almost a year-to-year process. And we first met monthly, and then as the end of the year came, we were meeting weekly. And so absolutely a lot of hard work went into this project. So the Code of Conduct, our General Counsel, Lisa Sullivan, actually came to some of our Code of Conduct meetings and then also provided a legal review for us. So her input was instrumental, and when we're having those discussions about it, these things that we can actually enforce and do. So it was really beneficial to have her help us. So some of the highlights of the 2017 Code of Conduct. This is the first time in history that I've known since 1992, I think, that we've actually produced 2 versions, and we're really proud of that. We created one for students and parents in language that I believe is going to be understood by parents and students. And then we also have an administrative version, which is extremely comprehensive, and so that they actually can have that level of guidance, the things that we would do in-house. The other highlight to the Code of Conduct is we have added language into the Code of Conduct around student participation in extracurricular activities, and our response to that if students violate, and when you look through the Code of Conduct, we're talking about serious and/or serious repeated offenses to the Code of Conduct, that their eligibility would be under question. The other highlight that we have that I'm excited about as well is we have, in the beginning, it's an acknowledgement form, and I have a copy of it right here for you as well. It's going to be difficult to read, but it's a basic structure that highlights some of the key things that we're expecting out of students, like coming to class on time, coming prepared, don't bully, let's not discriminate, and if you do see that, let's report it. So those are some of the highlights, but...
I want to talk about that, if I may, for a second.
Sure.
One of the big changes, and it may be coming up in the report, do they have a copy of that in their packet, of that sheet?
I think this might have been added after. I'm not quite sure.
You have it?
Do you?
But what it's small, but what they get is much larger than that. But what I think is really important is that the previous practice, people were checking online when they were registering that they'd read the Code of Conduct and received it. There's no way that they could do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not through that process. Mm-hmm. This will be collected in different ways at the various schools, okay? Mm-hmm. But what I do like about it is you can read these 15 things and talk to your kids about it in a very simple way without having to dig through the Code of Conduct, highlight the basic things. And I really want to thank them for this, and asking them, can you just cull out what are the basic behaviors, that we want kids to exhibit or to not engage in? I think this is going to go a long way. It also is a document for parents to have nice discussions with their kids about the basic code, so to speak, right, of how we conduct ourselves in our schools.
Exactly. I mentioned earlier, I think the one thing that I've reviewed many codes of conduct over the years, being a committee member and leading the Code of Conduct. The one thing that I love about our Code of Conduct is that it provides multiple response options for principals. So including you could have restorative justice practices you'll see in there, referral for ancillary services. So, if a principal is seeing that a student is just having a really difficult time, that it's not always about, I think, what people view as punishment, but what other types of services can we provide to students when we see behavior that is serious and or repeated. We see it going on. And that's not something you see, that I've seen, I should say, in a lot of codes of conduct. And it's, like I said, the positive options. And sometimes there are negative options, but also they can include those positive options. There's nothing that keeps a principal from administering those types of responses. The other part is something that we did in this Code of Conduct. We've always had a policy around cell phone use, and it's the one area where principals and teachers often have great difficulty with students. And what we were trying to capture in the Code of Conduct is that there are times in schools, especially now, where cell phones are being used. Teachers are using them in the classroom for academic reasons. I've seen students that have, many students who are, using their phone to take pictures of their assignment board. And so we really didn't want the Code of Conduct to take away from that, but also establish some real clear understanding that at no point should even when it's not allowed, that the cell phone should be disrupting, the instructional process. So within the Code of Conduct, we have outlined and basically called the principals to set up with their staff members, because every school is different, the expectations around cell phone use, when it's appropriate and when it's not, and be really clear and get that out to not only their students, but their parents. And then what would happen if they ended up inappropriately using the cell phones. So I think it's a real balance to being responsive to technology these days and what our kids are using the phones, and at the same time being really clear about not using cell phones at times when instruction is supposed to happen and when it's approved by the classroom teacher. Indeed, the dress code in this Code of Conduct has been restored. I know there are a lot of questions that are going out. Is this dress code new? But it really is not. It's not something that the committee chose to address this year within the Code of Conduct, but so it's just a restoration of the dress code that we had in place. I spoke a little bit about supplemental documents. The one thing, part of my passion around this work is giving people the tools that they need. And like I said in the beginning, the Code of Conduct can't stand alone. And so within the administrative version of the Code of Conduct, we have added supplemental documents. An example of that is a classroom management plan that we're encouraging every school to use. What we've learned is that some schools don't have classroom management plans. And that really is one of the basic foundations, a classroom management plan that teaches routines and procedures. And when those things are taken care of, that's half the battle. So we have a classroom management plan template for principals and teachers to use. And that template is actually based on positive behavior support. It's actually a program and a philosophy of implementing positive interventions in classroom management plans and making sure that your students know, when do I sharpen my pencil? What do I do when I arrive late? Those types of things where kids often get in trouble over because they don't know. So that classroom management plan is fantastic. And then also, we added in there some evidence-based strategies for teachers around such things like setting up routines and procedures and ways in which we can reward students for meeting expectations. And we're past the point of simply saying that students need to behave. We know that our percentage of students who experience trauma, either they've witnessed it or experienced it themselves, don't always allow them to be able to conduct themselves in ways that we want to. So it's really important that we help teachers to learn that about our students and also at the same time hold them accountable. So I feel like it's a real balance. And I think one of the most significant changes that I think is going to rock the principal's world is that our Code of Conduct is now aligned with Power School. We always had the incidents and infractions in Power School, but there was one section on there that didn't allow the principals to be able to, if there were more than one infractions going on in an incident, to be able to report that properly. So the information, could be different. So I think this is really going to make them happy. And the nice part about that is that Chris West and his team were part of this process. We met before school got out, and he got all of the pieces to the Code of Conduct and made it happen. And in years past, we've had to rely on outside people to make those changes. So Chris learned it. Now we have an in-house person. So and there are going to be errors, I'm sure. There's going to be quirks to this. So as principals find these things out, we can call Chris, and those changes can happen quickly. And I think that's, like I said, going to make a world of difference for the principals and those inputting the data into Power School. And that's it. I stand for any questions you might have.
Vice President Cashman?
I would just like to say thank you to the staff for doing this. I did go through the actual one for the parents and the students, and that was well put together. And I liked for parents, if you talked about dress code, well, then I say, well, what's the dress code? Well, you have a link to it, and the links all work, so hopefully this will be easier for our parents to use. And, you know, and I like that you've made provisions in that letter that parents signed, so if somebody does not have technology at home, we're going to provide that so they can sit and use our computers in the schools. So I think that's a positive thing, and then we're not killing tons of trees, sending home that packet that maybe a lot of people don't read. So thank you.
Thank you.
When you worked with Lisa on this, did you also, it's also aligned to board policy, I'd imagine?
Absolutely.
Great. Just because I don't know, hopefully we don't have to do that for like another 20 years. Go through every policy. Oh, that was laborious. I'm curious, and thank the committee as well. I know on behalf of the board, everyone that served on the committee. Has anyone ever said they won't sign the acknowledgement form? And if so, what do we do?
In my experience, I never had that. So
Well, I'll address that, if I may.
Sure.
They don't have to.
Yeah.
They're allowed to attend our schools, but this just gives us something to work off of, that they know what the rules were. But, you know, it doesn't really impact their due process. They're going to get the same due process whether they read it or not. It just is a communication tool, and that we can acknowledge. And then, in fact, you know, when a child does do something, well, you know, you were aware that you shouldn't. But lack of ignorance of the law is not an excuse for not compliance. So if they chose not to sign off, so be it. We're not going to keep the kids from registering, unlike, say, over time being disenrolled on vaccination, let's say.
After having been assistant principal at Santa Fe High for over 5 years and principal at Capshaw for a year, that's thousands of acknowledgement forms. I've never had anyone say no. Thousands and thousands and thousands. Thank you very much.
thank you.
And thank you for all the work
You're
you have
welcome.
done.
You're welcome. It was worth it.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. At this time, Carl Grendler and select cabinet members will be presenting. We're going to start off with where we left off with budget. We promised to do two things when we came back today. One was to let you know where we wound up with our final numbers with the budget. Secondly, to share with you how we balance the budget. One, I think, area of specific interest was where we were cutting back on admin costs or increasing, what the net change was. The third is the reorganization. When I came on board, I had an interim reorg, and I said I really needed to get a sense of how we operated. And so in conjunction with our fiscal restraints and whatnot, and to be more efficient, align our work, look at the talents that we have on cabinet, how do we utilize those talents to its fullest, to provide support to our schools. Because again, my philosophy, and that we all adopt, and I think that I believe that you support, we all exist to support the schools, and that's how we organized ourselves to do that within the resources that we have. So just kind of a 30,000-foot view. And so with that, our Chief Financial and Governmental Relations Officer, Mr. Grendler, will kick off this presentation.
Thank you, Superintendent. President Price, members of the board, colleague, audience. We see some familiar faces. We've been through a lot of budget meetings this year, and this is probably the last time we'll touch on the 2017-18 budget, we hope, as we move forward. So what we're going to chat about is a budget follow-up. We'll look at very quickly what happens at this time of the year with year-end reports and the operational cash budget, or cash balance, and preparing for the new school year, which is the occupation of business services and human resources in the summer. It's always entertaining when someone says, "Oh, school's out. Are you still working in the summer?" Then we'll move right to the reorganization, as the superintendent talked about, and lots of really pretty cool alignment, I think, from a strategic perspective to focus on our mission as an organization to improve student results. So we'll be happy to share that new organizational chart, some administrative savings that we had talked about in the budget, and then of course just get to questions. So moving right on to the year-end reports and the operational cash budget, or the cash balance. Year-end reports is what happens at the end of July and the first part of August, and so much has to happen in this whole process as you close the year and you begin the new year to prepare for the audit and then also to prepare for these reports. And I'll just give you one example. The actual retirement report it's about 15 million, and I'm not sure how many tens of thousands of lines because we report every couple of weeks. Last year we had an audit finding, we had a balance under $100. I don't know if you remember that. So we had a discrepancy of about $250. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack, which Richard found last night. So now that is balanced. We certainly won't have that kind of a challenge with this auditor on those kind of balances, but making sure that those types of things are tied out are the things that lead into solid preparation for the audit and then fully accurate reports to the Public Education Department. So the budget for our cash balance at fiscal year end was $3.4 million. That was conservative. It was calculated, and we did everything we could to to save money because that balance is so low. And what we actually were able to come in at is right around $4 million. And as we dot the i's, cross the t's on the final run tomorrow, we'll be able to confirm that number. But this is exactly how any CFO would plan this. Is that we slightly under budgeted revenue and we slightly over budgeted expenditures. Board Member Trujillo is nodding. That's, I'm sure, what you did in your agency, as that was your hope. So it was a very small percentage difference, but one I'd like to see every year. And in all the years that we've been working this challenge and presenting to you, we've been able to hit the projection on the cash balance, which is a reflection certainly of very solid planning, which we go through collectively for many, many months, and the details of all that roll up, and then very careful execution and watchful eyes of the leadership in the district to make sure that the expenditures are tied to our budget concepts, but flexible enough to be able to align with the needs of the organization. So leaving that behind, the big task that is underway in parallel is preparing the school district for now what is 2 weeks away for starting a school. So the budget was approved as we would expect from the Public Education Department, and we needed that, of course, to start July 1st in the new fiscal year with budget authority to be able to spend in our over 50 funds and approximately $185 million that flows through the districts other than debt service. So the school and the department FTE and the very sophisticated process we use to be able to predict that and control that by school, by department, by job class, by fund, and then how that relates into the work that Human Resources does for hiring. That is in parallel with all of the work that's taking place. And then, of course, all the other budgets which would set up budget authority for departments and schools. Okay. Now, one of the things that the superintendent asked to be included in this presentation, just to highlight the emphasis that the district, even in these austere budget times, has had on our employees, is taking a look at this. And so the holding employees harmless for health insurance premium increase has been a backbone of this strategy heading into the 4th year now. And it's really quite challenging to be able to share with you exactly what this means, because you have multiple employees, not everybody participates, Some are single, some are married, some choose high options, some choose low options. It's cumulative, and all of these different reasons. So what we're going to share with you is our best way to very succinctly in 1 or 2 minutes share what this is. So you can see there that there's in the latest report for the health insurance that there's 1,825 employees that qualify, 1,230 participate. So that's about 2/3 of our employees participate in our health insurance offerings with the school district and NEPSIA. So the cumulative 4-year benefit. So we thought the best way to share this with you and also to share with our employees over time is if we reverted back to the standard rates, what impact would it have on us today? So you can see that the average annual reduction in take-home pay per employee in their 17, 18 paychecks this year would range from $291, which would reflect a single person with the lowest cost option, which is practically a catastrophic insurance option that NEPSIA put out as a part of the Affordable Health Care Act to be able to stay within compliance, to $1,100 per family, which would be the family highest cost options, for an average annual benefit of $636 per year or $2,650 per paycheck. That's average. Median or mean would be lower. I think I calculated at $549 a month. So we have a lot more employees on the lower end than those that are paying over $6,000 a year out of their pay, their take-home pay for family benefits with the high options. So somewhere our employees that participate are going to be within this range on how it impacts their net pay, but their net pay will not go down because of health insurance premium increases. All right, school secretaries, you might recall from the competitive wage studies from years ago that school secretaries were right there at the top of the least competitive job classes. So in our differentiated compensation approach, school secretaries have been evaluated in collective bargaining for each of the last several years. So the overall increase is over 17% during this period of time, and then the benefit you can see there was $43,000 this year, but that plus the steps, generated a combined increase of 3.5%. And it's interesting that when we started this challenge, the average, salaries for school secretaries were quite a bit lower, and now they're in the $17,500 to $25,000 range, with beginning and the steps, which is certainly moving in the proper direction to recognize the the good and the challenging and ever-increasing work of our school secretaries. Bus drivers, another category which has a slightly different challenge because we compete with the city and others, but primarily with the city to attract our drivers, and we can't offer full-time employment. So, we went after that again this year to figure out a better salary schedule, which with our union colleagues figuring this out, and transportation employees, we've led ourselves to a better place and a more excited workforce, and a workforce that wants to stay with us. And there's far fewer this year that we're looking for in bus drivers than we had last year when we really began to sense this urgency of competitive position, for our salary tables for bus drivers. Custodians and maintenance workers. This is the SFPS union, and as Ms. Yonder reported, I think it was in the last time we met actually, when we had ratified and voted on the contract, we increased 2.5% for all in the salary tables. And this was done really for the cost of moving or the replacement of one retired custodian employed to contract. And as the year ended, and as we can see what the cash balance is in student nutrition, there is another opportunity to be able to evaluate something for this year. So we're working on that right now. We'll be working with NEA to talk about it, and that's something you might see in the near future. But we're always looking out for opportunities to do the right thing with the resources we have.
Vice President Cashman?
Could you please go? Okay. I just want to make sure that we have clarification on under bus driver, it's bullet number 2. That doesn't mean that our bus drivers are making $51,000
No.
a year. I just want to make sure, because some people are going to read it that way and say, whoa, wait a minute, so I just wanted to make sure that that's not what our bus drivers are, and even though they deserve it, but I just want to make sure that, because otherwise, somebody picking up these slides could be saying, why am I even teaching if I can make that as a bus driver?
Right. Well, President Price, Vice President Cashman, that's absolutely correct. We certainly could have said that better and said increase in total annual salary pool of $51,000 for our bus drivers. Ready to go ahead? All right, you've seen this slide before. This is the sources of how we were able to strategically come to a decision of the board to balance the operational budget for 17-18. And the only reason I'm bringing this forward is that we're doing all these things. And particularly the administrative savings at the top, which we'll show you on the next slide. So as we look through all the changes and the ins and outs and the combinations and the reorganization of responsibilities and people that are no longer here and people that are here and all that the superintendent talked about on combining and enhancing and improving our effectiveness of an organization and focusing on our schools and our employees and our performance in the classroom, this is what it comes out to be. So we expected it would be about this, and it is. So that's really what we're reporting to you tonight. Well, that's not good. Yeah. Well, that's what this is supposed to be. It looks great on PowerPoint. Is there anything that going on here?
Thank you, Board President. So while we're waiting, I was going to wait for questions, but I think this is a good time because we're waiting on this. The general fund revenue tracking report through May of 2017 is really very good. So May reoccurring revenues were $589 million, which is up $141 million or 32% from a year ago. The monthly revenue, reoccurring revenues for FY17 were stronger than FY16 for the 4th month in a row. So revenue collection for FY17 through May was $5.2 billion, which is up $121 million or 2.4% from the same period last year. This growth significantly exceeds the consensus revenue forecast, which was a 1.9% decrease in revenue for the full fiscal year. So even though we see the cost of gas is going down, we have a great increase in reoccurring revenue, and the state is in really good shape right now. I know it's very early on, it's only August, but the prediction was that it was going to be almost 2% decrease again, and we have a pretty significant increase. So no need to celebrate it this very moment, but I think our hopes can begin to rise.
We did try to look at all the scenarios. I know it was painful, but I think we did our due diligence based on the information we had at each moment. Yep. And it was a changing target. I know that was difficult for the public
And this just came out
to
July
get
26th.
a sense of where are we really. And, I appreciate that the board, trusted, our judgment in trying to make the best guess. And that it was a guess. I mean, it was try to be an intelligent guess, but nobody has a crystal ball. We didn't know for sure. But trying to make the decision that would hopefully have the least amount of negative impact on our schools. So we hope that revenue picture holds, and that we made the right decision for our district. And each school district had to do it in their own way. They all have their own situations. So with that, are there other questions before we go to the reorg, just on what was presented thus far from any of the board members? No? So if you look at, I hope that the public can see it. If this is also, I believe, posted on our website, there are backup charts that the board has for each of these. What we're super excited about, we presented let's only backtrack. One of the things, the feedback that we received from principals and staff, and was my own experience, is who does what, like what are the functions, what do all these people do? And what we have done now, there are live links on this org chart where someone can click on a particular one and get a phone number and an email address so they can contact people. We also have the same for our directories by person's name, but also by function. So maybe I don't know who is an accounts payable, but I can go to accounts payable and find who they are. Or if I know it by the person by name, I can find it that way too. So again, this is more systems alignment. How do we make our lives easier for our employees? And they're going to, the feedback we received from the secretaries was very positive, that they could actually know what people do and click on the chart and find somebody. And so I'm really excited to present this to the principals. So the way that we reorganized, if you look at the middle section, and I'm speaking more to the people that are watching on the audience, is that obviously the community is at the top of the chart. They give input to the board. I work for the board. And then we move from there. To the right is our general counsel, Lisa Sullivan. And Lisa, provides legal advice, facilitates MOUs, policy and administrative regulation development, legal services, vendor management, all of that legal piece is done by general counsel. That doesn't mean we don't use outside counsel, but it does save us money. On the left, so the middle is the heart, and that's all the instructional piece, and we'll talk about that in a minute. On the left, we're going to start on the far left. Mr. Romero, you want to come forward? Director of School Security, Gabe Romero, and he will tell you about the functions under his bailiwick. For the board, if you go to his chart, I guess they're not in order there, you can get more detailed information. And all of this is on the website.
Superintendent, President Price, and board members, I have a small but very efficient department, so there's not a lot of room for reorg, but what I do want to emphasize is that we do try very hard to make supporting our schools our #1 priority, and we know who our customer is, and that's the students that we serve. And in our way, by serving the schools and the administrators as effectively as we can and getting out there and working alongside them is how we make sure that we're supporting our schools in every way that we can. So my small department is myself, who manages all the security systems throughout the district, and alongside with me is Maria Lisa Dilda, who also helps the schools through emergency preparedness, and that's a big part of what we do, is make sure that our schools are ready to handle anything that comes their way, and we train and practice and drill to make sure that that happens. And along with that, we have our security officers and the crossing guard programs. So in short, that's my department, and it's stayed relatively the same since last year.
Any questions? Okay. All right, let's just go ahead and move on. The next is a new department, newly formed, and in that position is our Chief Community Engagement Officer and Records Custodian, Jeff Gephardt. You all know Jeff. Jeff took on more function with less people because of the reorg. So a lot of this was coming from B.F. Young. I know that we mentioned this earlier, but Linda and our Deputy Chief Information Officer, Strategist Elias Bernardino, they interviewed everybody at BF Young, looked at all of those functions, and we met to see where we thought this would better fit. A lot of the work that Jeff was doing was around community engagement. Communications is around community engagement. One thing that I want to hit on this is also a way of how do we engage our community in an aligned way, but also to generate revenue for the district, which we've already begun to do, that has helped us be able to sponsor, for example, the Leadership Institute and so on. So with that, Jeff, you want to take it?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia. So the Community Engagement Department, the mission of the department is very much to create that engagement in our schools. Student engagement, parents, families, community engagement. Dr. Garcia mentioned how we're raising money, we're writing grants to pay for a lot of the programs that we have in place right now. We just received $15,000 for the truancy task force. So we're a small team, but I think we have a strategic plan and the systems in place to really build that engagement. Gone are the days where we can just sort of rely on the press to write our story. Parents will be involved. Students are engaged. We need to help. We need to create that. And so this department is very much about creating that engagement. We have our volunteer and event coordinator is Sabra Roybal, and she's in the process of developing a volunteer program at the district level that very much meets the skill sets of our volunteers, and we have an inordinate number of volunteers in Santa Fe that want to help, and very skillful volunteers as well. She wants to meet those skills with the actual needs in our classroom to really help move that bar, not just help out with the admin type work, or I'm sorry, like assistant type work, but very much in the classroom helping move that bar or after school programs. She's also coordinating a lot of the events, the Back to School Bash, which you'll be hearing a lot about over the next couple of months. Very much to create that community engagement. And since the Back to School Bash and the State of the Schools last year, we now have quite a few organizations coming up, stepping up and saying, hey, they want to be involved, they want to sponsor these things to help really get the community involved and help create those opportunities to get the parents involved and the students excited about what we're doing. And then we also have our new digital communication specialist, and just a little side note, these aren't new positions. In fact, these positions that we have here have been consolidated from a number of other positions. So we've actually reduced and streamlined in doing this. But our new digital communication specialist, Doug Moser, he is the webmaster now. He's going to support the schools. We've developed a plan in very much utilizing the website as an effective communication tool moving forward. We're working very closely with Tom Ryan and his team. They're handling the technology side of this. Doug Moser is very much handling the support side of it for the schools and the departments. He'll also be supporting schools and departments, and I know you love these, board member Carrillo, but the robocall system and coming up with a plan moving forward on how we can make that so it truly is what the end user wants, how the end user wants to receive that information. We're working towards that goal. And so we're going to be, this year, we're going to be working on that, and Doug Moser will be leading that. He's also doing a lot in the way of press releases and newsletters to keep the board as well as people across the district informed and what's going on throughout the district. And then finally, Crystal Ibata, who is a licensed social worker. She has joined the team, and she will be handling the truancy task force initiatives, which includes our Everyday Matters campaign. I believe that was one of our last board meetings last year where all the students received those awards. She will be handling Parent Academy, which we're looking to expand very much by building that program along in partnership with the people who need the support and need the services. that program very much is about helping our parents very much to have those skills that people need to be involved in their schools and in their students' education. And so that program, very valuable program. She's been working with a number of community partners to expand that and make that even more effective. And then finally, the Superintendent's Equity Advisory, which we'll be having our first meeting here this fall. And Dr. Garcia might want to speak a little bit more on that.
Well, yeah, and what I wanted to mention also, that you didn't, everyone that you're going to hear from tonight, they're just touching on a few pieces. There are so much activity and so much going on that is aligned with the work that they all do. Whether it's, coordinating the radio programs and, all the interviews and all the different things that we do to get the word out of the great things that are happening in our district and to engage people. But did you want to talk about the Employee Information Center?
Oh, and that is another thing that we're rolling out this year. As somebody that works in the schools, oftentimes they don't really hear about things that are going at the district level or going on at the board meetings. And oftentimes they read about things in the newspaper and they're thinking, well, how come I didn't know about this? And so we have a new information portal. It's called the Employee Information Center. And Doug Moser will be managing that. He's actually working with Tom Ryan's team on making sure that our employees across the district, whether they're teachers, secretaries, whomever, they will have access to information about the district. There are different sections to it. There's a board section. So after every meeting, we're going to list the action items and what was approved. There'll be quick little summaries because, educators don't have a lot of time to dig through policies. They have to just go in, they can see what happened, and there'll be a link to the policy or the resolution or whatever was voted on, things like that. There's a district news section, so when we have new hires at the district level, for example, last year, Richard Bowman left us, and Tom Ryan came in. And we sent out a press release, but a lot of the people in the schools, they didn't see it, they didn't catch the email, and then they started thinking, well, who's Tom Ryan and what's he do? And so this organization chart will be on there. So a lot of the information, and there's a lot more to it. We could probably spend an hour just talking about that, but he will be managing that information center as well. Doug Moser will be.
Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Board Member Trujillo?
Thank you, Board President. So, Jeff, one of the challenges has always been getting background checks completed for our volunteers and schools knowing who it is that they're supposed to send potential volunteers to try to get that, because there's been a lack of communication. So I'm really excited about this. I imagine that will be one of the things that you'll be trying to streamline. I worked for the Community Connections Department for the school district in Kent, Washington, and this is exactly what we did, were these kinds of things. So this has always been after my own heart. But that volunteer coordination is such an incredible, it's such a big project. So I really hats off for trying to organize this, and hopefully we'll know where to send people.
Yes, and Board Member Trejo, so we do have we just met with secretaries today about that, to talk about moving forward with the volunteer program. And we've actually looked into a lot of things, and just to kind of give you a sneak peek of what's coming, we are going, the application process will be online. So it'll be easier for people to renew their registrations and their volunteer applications. We are looking into ways of making the background check easier, but we don't want to lower the standards. I mean, the safety and security of our students is our #1 goal. And so we need to ensure that, but how can we do it in a way that makes it easier for those people that want to volunteer? And so we're looking into ways of doing that as well. And so the secretaries, I believe, maybe I'm wrong for the thousands that are watching from home, I apologize if I am, but it seemed like they were excited about some of these new initiatives that we have coming down the pike regarding our volunteer program.
So are we doing fingerprint background checks, or are we doing the New Mexico DPS background checks?
So we do the fingerprint background checks, and to be honest with you, this is something that I'm not sure if Gabe, our Director of Security here, he might be able to handle, because and you are right, it is one of the obstacles right now, but it's also, we want to ensure that the people going into our schools
Absolutely.
have those background checks. So I don't know if we can turn it over to Gabe here.
It's just a question, and then I wonder if we're doing the fingerprint background checks, are the cost of, the handprint machines going down? Is it possible we can have one of those here?
That's something we're actually looking into. And so if you're interested, we can have an update on the volunteer program. Sabra can come, we can organize it into a presentation. But it is something we're looking into. And we are, even at the volunteer fair, she was hoping to have something right there so people could do it right there. And so she's working with some partner organizations to see if we can do that.
Okay.
And so, but as for having a machine here, we don't right now, but she's actually looking into it. She's thinking big right now, but she's a realist. And so we need to see, financially if it's worth purchasing something like that.
All right, thank you. That's fine. That's all. I'm
Okay.
happy with that.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to move now to the Chief Information and Strategy Office and Officer. So go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia, and to answer the segue of who is Tom Ryan and what does he do, that's why I'm here, and that's me, Jeff. I was in your office today. Anyway, the shift to digital is coming across the country, and it's this complex systems of systems, and we're starting to see technology not being the break-fix shop it has been in the past, but a partner with communications, a partner with instruction, a partner with finance, and trying to look at not how do we make technology work, but how do we make the function of teaching and learning improve using the resources we have. As you look at the chart, you'll see that I am, as Jeff mentioned, the person that's come in after Richard Bowman, and underneath or with me is Elias, and he is our Deputy Chief Strategy Officer. He's focusing mainly on process improvements, systems, and strategies, and aligning our work with the goals of the district.
Oh, and I would like to clarify, just for the board, for context. So this is not a new position, this was William Wonker's position? Okay.
Secondly, the most of the positions that I have on my organization chart are paid for out of contract ETN monies or other capital monies. They're not really competing with teachers. We're really focused on getting as many of the resources we can into the classroom. So there's three main categories in my department. One is the digital learning plan, which is led by Neil Weaver. These are all ETN paid positions, so they're off of the capital budget. What we're really focusing on this year is an alignment with instruction. These are teachers that are licensed teachers. They're also good teachers. So we're using them as coaches that happen to use digital strategies to help us move forward, as Dr. Garcia said, in our park plan and alignment. The second major category is Patricia Nordby's, or the IT section of this. What's amazing in this area, 12 of the staff members in her area are contractors, again paid for by ETN funds, and she takes care of the network, break fix systems, the different software systems, including Visions and our Power School and other systems that we have. She also takes care of filtering and cybersecurity. And then the third main area is accountability and strategy, which Chris West leads. And this is really the only group that has any operational funds go to it. This is our state reporting. Our assessment division is in this area for park assessment. All of our reports, research about what's happening and why it's happening, this all comes out of Chris's shop. So those are the three main divisions in my group. Any questions?
So now, excuse me, so now we'll move to the center of the chart, and this is where all the instructional piece is, school excellence and innovation. And we'll go ahead with our Deputy Superintendent, Linda Sink.
Well, President Price, board members, and Superintendent Garcia. So, as you can see from the organizational chart, I've taken over the lead on teaching and learning and school support. But Dr. Garcia has made it very clear to me that I'm supposed to spend more time in school support and with our schools and principals, working very much side by side our executive directors rather than a lot of time spent with our directors. I am trying this summer and part of the beginning of the fall to work closely with our directors, if you will, to give direction and vision along with what I have learned from the board and Dr. Garcia on the direction that we want to take this district. So I am making some changes. So therefore, what we've done is we've gone and met with every employee at BF Young. We've done basically a functional audit, looking for their expertise, where we can create cross-functional teams and realign the work towards really supporting our schools. I think there's been a lot of isolation over there, and what my goal is to have complete support for the schools and realign people so that that's our direction. It is exciting. The people that we do have over there, once I learned their expertise and are aligning their work around what they're experts at and what they like to do, people feel, I think, a new excitement over there. So we're excited about that. Where we got some savings is we had an assistant leave, and so we at this point are not going to rehire that assistant. We also have moved our savings too by having executive directors under school support. If you look over to the far right on your own chart, you can see the executive director, Chanel Wilson-Segura, and also Vanessa Romero are under the schools that you see. But we are calling them executive directors instead of associate soups, which saved us some funds there. The other reason that we feel okay with doing that is that the work that they'll be doing will be solely with the schools, whereas when I was working with James and Will this past year, they were given a lot of duties outside of just being with the schools. They were heads of different committees, et cetera, that were really large. And some of that work actually, as was mentioned before, has gone over to a different department, and I think that that's going to work better for us because we can solely work on being involved with the schools.
So those were a lot of the shifts that went over to community engagement?
Yes.
We did, but we did also consolidate positions.
Yes.
So that also helped us realize some savings. But it made more sense.
Yes.
In terms of how it fit, and also I wanted to work more closely with some of those groups that I really couldn't do that when it was at BF Young. And so having it with community engagement allows me also to have closer proximity to some of that because I want to work more closely in those areas.
So you can see on your org chart, if you move from Julie Lucero, who's Executive Director for Exceptional Student Services, and then moving to Sue O'Brien, Director for Student Wellness, Lisa Vihel, Director of Multicultural, Dr. Melissa Lomax, who you didn't get to meet tonight, and I feel very badly about that because I think that could have been my fault. I'll talk to her tomorrow, but I'll have her come on the 15th so you can meet her. She comes with a wealth of knowledge. I'm very excited to have her. She'll take over for Trina. Trina is retiring, and hopefully we can get Trina back after she stays out for a little while. But she's going to work alongside Dr. Lomax for this month, all of month of August, so she won't be gone until the end of the month and help with that transition. And then what I wanted to point out to you, and I think it's on your chart, I hope it is, that we've color-coded that all of the people in green are paid for by grants. So we have a really, I think, lean area over here of what we're doing in teaching and learning. And as you can see, there's a lot of work to do. Sometimes people ask, well, what do you do over there? And I'm excited to now put down, and I really like the idea that Dr. Garcia had about putting down what people do, because I think sometimes we minimize what we do with people at BF Young as if they don't matter. They have told me that people treat them differently because they work there. And I want to show you, and I'm very excited about it because I have met with all of them now. I know what they do. And by putting down all of this description, it makes me feel good that we are a lean machine, but yet we're doing a lot of work. And I'm really proud of the work they're doing. And what we're doing is really aligning it again. We're really going to have a robust PD program this year. I'm moving people, really moving them toward what is going to be best for teaching and learning and instruction, and building that instruction to a higher degree of depth of what needs to happen in each classroom. So it's going to look different this coming year. We're going to have actually a lot of PD even in the month of August.
For those listening that may not know professional development.
Yes, sorry about that. Professional development. We'll have lots of professional development. One example that you'd be interested in is that we adopted ReadyGen, which is our English language arts textbook for K-6 last fall. And for different reasons, many of the schools never got started using it. There wasn't really professional development. All the materials didn't come in on time. So what we're doing is virtually starting over, and we're having a professional development for all teachers this month who feel like they need a beginning step with learning how to use that textbook. And then we're also having one that goes more in depth for those schools that did begin using that textbook. And then we're going to take that book, and all year, twice a month, we're going to be meeting to develop a curriculum map next to it so that they really learn how to use the Common Core standards along with the textbook, and learning to go at a depth of knowledge that they need to do, and other activities and strategies that you use in the classroom to build that depth of knowledge and critical thinking. So that's going to be very exciting. We're doing some similar stuff in math with Carnegie, beginning that in August as well. We'll start working on curriculum mapping with Carnegie and get going all the way from K through 12. We started in the high school. We went backwards in the math. We started with high school with the algebra, geometry, trig, etc., and we're going to back into middle schools now for the next few months and really focus on middle schools for a little while. That's where I see from the data that we need to work hard and get to a much different depth of knowledge in that arena. So I think these people are going to be equipped to do that work, and the people that we hired, the new principals that we hired, we worked really hard this summer to hire the very best, and I can't tell you how excited I am about the people that have been hired and the expertise that's coming to our district. So with that, I stand for any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Singh.
Thank you.
We'll go on to the Chief Operations Officer, Christiana Wagner. I also want you to really pay attention to the color of her chart.
Good evening, Board President, Board members, Superintendent Garcia. The operations team is comprised largely of departments with a service orientation. So our work, not unlike many of Ms. Singh's, but our work is really focused on providing services and support to the school district in the areas of transportation, student nutrition, facilities and maintenance, capital planning, and district-wide sustainability. Although the column on the main organizational chart, the folks reporting to the Chief Operations Officer are actually kind of light in number in comparison to some of my colleagues. These departments represent over 250 district employees. So that's custodial workers, maintenance employees, bus drivers, food servers, managers, et cetera. And if you factored in our contracted employees, there's well over 300 persons represented by the operations team. Many of the faces and the folks serving in these departments are familiar to us, though they've stepped up due to circumstances and stepped up their role. So I'll talk a little bit about that tonight. But Judy Hawkes is familiar to everyone. I think Judy's tenure is in the high teens, 17, 18 years as our food service director. She oversees that department staff, the implementation of our programming, and the hiring and employment and supervision of our programs district-wide. Our facilities and maintenance director, interim director, is Marissa Bonifer, and she was a strong second to Paul Bach, our director, and we've asked her to step up while we work on some, first of all, school opening and focusing our efforts on getting through the summer, but we work on some reorganization and thinking about how the new director position might work to best serve the district. So Marissa also has worked for Santa Fe Public Schools for 17, 18 years in facilities and maintenance, carrying several roles, and over the last half a dozen years or so has directly supervised our district custodial and maintenance staff. Marissa is now assisting me with the implementation of all of our maintenance efforts. District-wide, our maintenance contracts, those are the pieces that we fund through our mill levy budgets, and that totals about $10 million annually in contracts, so we're getting started up for the year with that. Our interim director of transportation, Alice Leck, she was also a strong second to our director, David, who left us here early this summer. And she has one assistant director and a full office staff and a full shop staff supporting our drivers and the various compliance and operational needs of the transportation department services. That includes all to and from services. That means to school in the morning and from school to home in the afternoon, and all of our activities district-wide. Our energy and water conservation program coordinator is really a department of one and takes the efforts of many, but Lisa Randall manages our sustainability initiatives district-wide, and I want to speak specifically to our focus this year, which will be around aligning the implementation of our district-wide sustainability plan with our board policy around sustainability, and really expanding our reach in ways that are possible given our limited depth, but in really charging our district directors with carrying initiatives out into departments, into schools, into our employee ranks in ways that don't make it impossible for us to move the work with literally one employee in that body, assigned to that body of our work. Our construction management team is comprised of 2 project managers and an asset manager. They oversee all school construction, primarily funded through the general obligation bond, but many times also projects for mill levy. They also oversee procurement, requests for proposals, our contract management. Our asset manager oversees our leases, sales, et cetera, for the school district. And then an example in the operations arm of cross-functional teaming this year that Dr. Garcia spoke to earlier is our inclusion of the athletics and activities director under operations. We're extremely excited about that for many reasons. First of all, I'm excited to work with Ms. Linda Sink and Carl Grunler in really cross-functionally supporting those functions for our department, but I'm really looking forward to the efficiencies that can be gained. If you think about athletics and activities and the interaction between student nutrition, transportation, and facilities and maintenance, it's a great span of their work. So obviously the focus is serving students. Obviously the focus is providing additional programming to get our students college and career ready, keep them engaged in their learning. But we can provide efficiencies in that service by working together as a team to support athletics and activities. So we're extremely excited about that, and you'll see that that is still a vacant position as well. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
I want to piggyback on that, if I may. It also, again, where do staff have a vision? Where do they have talent? Where do they have expertise? What can we take off another department so they can have greater vision and focus? Ms. Sink really wants to focus on the instructional program. I really want to, as I said, her skills, her talents are really working with those principals in those schools. She really understands curriculum instruction. As you know, athletics can take a lot of time. It's very important. Ms. Wagner, has a passion and a vision about how we can better align that work, what we can better do around activities. So does Mr. Grundler in a lot of ways, but moving it to that department, and Ms. Sink will still be involved. They will work as a team, obviously, as they work with principals and whatnot. But we were able to then, because it's going to be in that department, we were able to then cut up an admin position because we can provide the support because of the staff that's already there. There will also be another cross-functional team that I've asked her to take on in collaboration with Mr. Grundler and with Ms. Sink, and that's around compliance, our reporting, our quality of grants around state grants. And it's a place that I think we could have done better. And I think that this is going to be a great way of collaboration with the three of them to improve that process for our district. So so not only do we get more bang for the buck and having different eyes from different perspectives, looking at some of these processes, we're also building a lot of institutional capacity in this cross-functional teaming approach. So it's not, so now we have 2 or 3 people that understand how that operates. And I think builds a stronger bench for the district moving forward. Thank you. Let's see. Is it Mr. I think it's, okay, go ahead, Stephen. I think Mr.
Okay.
Grundler was next with business services. I don't know, the
Sorry,
board has it over here. Go ahead.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia, much like what others have spoken of in regards to no additional FTE, we've pretty much done the same. We've tried to do more with less in regards to creating efficiencies for ourselves, looking for areas where we can improve, looking at areas of duplication. So again, I'm glad that Carl earlier brought up the fact that, a lot of folks, the misconception a lot with HR and a lot of other areas that are 12-month is that school is out, so you guys aren't busy. The reality of it is for human resources, it's actually our busiest time of the year. As we have folks who retire every year, we are very vital in helping them get into the retirement stage for those that are leaving, those that might be going to another district in regards to verifications of employment and so forth. But again, summer school starts. So again, we have recruiters working all year to try to keep us staffed, but again, that's just another segment of what happens during the summer. Just when we got it going full throttle, summer school comes to an end. So here we are now letting off these people off our summer programs, and then the real fun starts, and that's when we start getting ready for the new school year and so forth. So again, how we've been structured, it's pretty much the same structure that we've maintained. In the spirit of cross-functional training, we've continued to stay within that same type of concept. Myself and my assistant director, Beth Switzer, we're the newest members of our team. We are learning firsthand in regards to how to best serve principals, the functionality of the schools. Our goal this year, now that principals are coming back, not just existing principals, with new principals, is to work closely with them, cultivate relationships with them that help them be more at ease in regards to the operation of their school. In regards to Beth's position, it's more of the day-to-day in the trenches, type position to where, again, we all get pulled in different directions, but we understand that when people need help, they need that specific help now. In addition to leading investigations, which is more up to happen now that school starts up again. The personnel matters investigations are things that can't necessarily wait. So again, we do want to focus our positions in giving customer service. And again, tying to cross-functional teams, that's where we start tying to our benefits, where we have Kay Greenfield. She is one FTE. And frankly, sometimes I'm not sure how she does it. You know, she handles everything from medical, dental, vision benefits, retirement programs, everything from FLA, our sick leave bank. The good thing about Kay is that she's been with the district for many years. She's also cultivated many relationships with teachers and principals through the years. So as a backup for Kay, we do jump in and help her simply because there's going to be certain times during the year, such as open switch enrollment, other times when we have benefit changes where she can't do it alone. So that's where our cross-functional teams really come into play. The area that really focuses on helping her is our employee services. That's where we, as far as working titles, is where we have our HR generalists located. These are the folks that are really the go-to folks when school gets started. They administer and support the substitute teacher system, which involves working closely with the school sites to identify what their needs are from day to day. Positions also support the general functions of HR, serving as backups to recruitment. We mentioned benefits, and they also assist with the onboarding process, which is the initial key entry of every new hire, ensuring that everything is complete, everything is accurate, and again, our goal is to get people paid timely. In regards to records data, if there's ever an IPRA, anything else that might require some data research, verifications of employment, that's where our employee services folks jump in and they make sure that we meet our deadlines and so forth. In regards to other areas such as providing assistance with employees when they want to advance their license, we work with them to make sure that we got everything from PED in order to do that. Jumping to our talent acquisition and sourcing, that's a fancy name for where we have our recruiters. They're responsible for attracting and recruiting individuals into our school district to include initial onboarding. By working closely with hiring managers to develop recruitment plans, we want to ensure that our applicants, in regards to especially teachers, have the adequate licensure that they need, and again, that their licenses are up to date in regards to PED requirements and so forth. This area also works diligently to identify recruitment opportunities by researching new sources of talent, cultivating relationships with school professionals, and networking with outside entities such as universities. We also work with New Mexico Workforce Solutions. And we've also been very successful in working with public education departments' visiting teacher program. You can ask many of our schools that work with dual language. Many of those teachers have been very beneficial in regards to our bilingual programs. So we're very proud of the type of relationships that we've been able to cultivate with those outside entities. And again, our recruiters also represent Santa Fe Public Schools at public events such as job fairs and community outreach programs. So again, one thing about recruitment, it is nonstop. Even throughout the year, we do have people who leave. So it's very important that we maintain our recruitment outreach so that we have the ability to fill those positions. Again, our objective is not to get long-term subs in there. We're after the licensed professionals who can come in and take over a classroom. Talent management, these are what we consider, as far as working titles, our HR specialists. These are our more tenured employees. Some of them have worked through the recruitment ranks. They are the ones that help myself with the administration of employment contracts related to wages, salaries. These positions work closely with Carl's group and business services, with school budgets in regards to position control, the allocation of positions in regards to FTE counts and so forth. So again, they are an intricate part of our daily operation in regards to updating employee records relating to advancement and licensure. Whenever we have transfers, promotions, and terminations, these positions do work closely with management by providing guidance and direction to ensure compliance with policies, the collective bargaining agreement, and the administration of the disciplinary process to ensure consistency. So again, I consider these positions to be more of the police of the HR department, simply because their primary role is to make sure that as principals and teachers that we are following policy and that we are being consistent in regards to how we apply discipline, adherence to the CBA, and again, be careful in regards to how we operate, because once we create a past practice, we often end up living with it. So again, it's really more of conforming and consistency. We do also have, not listed here, 2 other HR support positions, which are very helpful in regards to the intake of new applicants. We do try to gear some of these positions to bilingual Spanish-speaking, simply because the majority of the people that we do have come in require assistance. A lot of them are Spanish speakers. So it's very important that we're able to relay the information that they'd like to put on an application and ensure that we capture everything that we possibly can through the application process. Is there any questions?
Just want to add one thing to that. A practice that I think you've kept is to have them work with the schools, sort of a trio. So you have someone from employee services, someone from the talent acquisition, and someone from the talent management team. And they work as a mini team with the school so that all 3 can interface on the issues that are going on within one school. So I think that's been a very positive practice that you've maintained. Thank you.
I would like to say that a number of the school board members and a number of the employees in this district are glad that the name has been changed back to Human Resources and shifted away from Capital. That really offended a great many people. So thank you very much.
And we've actually changed sign on the building to correspond with that.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And last but not least, our Chief Financial and Governmental Relations Officer will share with you some highlights from the Business Services Department.
You bet. Thank you, Superintendent Garcia, President Price, members of the board, colleagues and audience. How to describe business services in 3 minutes or less is I'm not even going to try, so I'm going to do the best I can to say that with approximately $185 million, over 50 funds, this is a complex place. It took me a year before I really knew where the restroom was when I came to public education, and I've been in in the world of finance and operations and human resources my whole life. So it's really the challenge is to have a staff that can handle the mystery of all this, but yet take the mystery out of the numbers for everybody else. So that's really what we work hard to do. And there's 15 professionals upstairs and I work to do that every day, to support our leadership, to support all of our employees, to make sure our place in the community is strong and we're a responsible and respected and supported organization. All of those things. But I think one of the key responsibilities that we have, which doesn't get talked about too much, is that we are responsible for the use of the public's resources for its intended purpose to advance the results of public education in our schools and for our students. And so we look at that all the time. That's a significant portion of how we think about these resources that are provided to us. So when you look at the business services organization, Dina holds things together for a whole lot of people upstairs. I don't know how many of you know Dina, but she handles a lot of the details of transactions that move around the organization that support, by the time the year's over, probably touches almost every employee. And then Richard Halford, who you know well, Richard is responsible for the fiscal operations of the organization, and that's largely more of the day-to-day. So A lot of what doesn't get noticed is treasury. How do we handle cash? How do we move it around? How do we make all this magic happen? And that means payroll, it means accounts payable, that means procurement. So that portion of the operation, we've got very experienced people that know their jobs and support everybody well. And again, we probably touch we do. We touch every employee every 2 weeks in the organization, through payroll. And there's hundreds and hundreds of vendors, who are supported upstairs. And of course, the money moves, and that's the big part of what we do. It's not so much on the revenue side, although it is, because Carl Stevens, our comptroller, is responsible for all that, and the bank reconciliations, and the general ledger, and many of the portions that support filings. And he's also responsible for Medicaid administrative filings. We've been able to increase that, getting the right person on the job, so to speak, and supporting of SUE and student wellness and special education on these administrative reportings, which bring in now over $400,000 a year, where it was less than $100,000 as much as a year and a half ago. So, and of course, Andrea Gallegos, who is really the official title for the state of anyone who has that responsibility as Chief Procurement Officer. She really knows her business. She's retired from the state after 25 years. We're fortunate to have her, and she, dots the I's, crosses the T's on procurement, even though a lot of people don't particularly care to do all the things that are required. We do them. So we keep ourselves, on the straight and narrow with procurement. And when you look to the other side, which is Charlene Moya, who I doubt that many of you know Charlene. She's a retired business official from Espanola, has a lot of experience in the school business community, and she manages really everything to do with the cash and the budget and the tracking and the reimbursements and all of that support for the grants. Over 40 grants. So it's a significant amount of work that has to be done. And then all of the reports that are very detailed in themselves. MOE, for example, for special education. There's some Title I reports that have to be done. So in any case, she has a couple folks, and we've had to grow that area because, over the last couple of years, because of the compliance challenges that have continued to mushroom, from the federal and the state level. So when you look at all of this, I see the biggest challenge is that we have a very experienced staff. But because we have a very experienced staff, they're not going to be here forever. So the challenge for us is really to insert some younger talent over time to figure out how to do that with an extremely lean organization so that this whole thing can keep moving, as people change and the responsibilities change in the organization.
Thank you very much.
And so this concludes this presentation. I have to say that I'm very, very proud of this team. They're extremely intelligent, hardworking, committed to the district. I feel like we've got an A-team leadership. The directors also, we just have a very talented team. I'm very excited about where we're moving. I think we're all very aligned in what we want to accomplish, and that's improved outcomes for our kids and producing well-rounded students. The Santa Fe Public Schools is a wonderful place to work, and we want to create a culture where all of our employees feel that this is a place they want to be, that we retain and we recognize all of our employees. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you very much. You set the tone. And so at this point, I'm going to take a 15-minute break because we have something we have to do here. Today is Dr. Garcia's birthday. So the first thing we have to do is we have to sing happy birthday, and then for all those people who left, they don't get any cake. So 15-minute recess, and then we sing happy birthday. This is the order. This is the happening. We're going to sing happy birthday, we're going to eat cake, and then we're going to come back.
Thank you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Dr. Garcia. Happy birthday to you, and many more.
Thank you. What a nice surprise. What a surprise. Thank you.
I think I was going to forget. You have a birthday the same as Javier.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's Javier's.
Sorry, Carl, I didn't mean to get cut.
The mayor?
See, my glasses are.
The mayor and I have the same birthday?
I took the
You're
bike.
kidding me.
So does Brad.
No, I didn't realize that.
About, oh, yeah.
I have, herniations in my neck and my back, and I just did a number of things that messed me up.
So we honor that piece to so we calculated on conditions what that would be effective this date. That's the prorated amount That's probably one of the ones that we wanted to clarify with him, but we can insert it, we can do a manual. He's probably making more at the end of the year. If you add whatever you all want. We went off the spreadsheet. We kept it the same. It was talked that maybe because of the responsibilities. What we did is, this is the one, we made sure that that was a superintendent. And we kind of just ran through those that haven't been added, Carl. We just inserted them based on the emails. So we make it capture things like the kids out. We have out for lunch. We have Mr. Dennis that I took out. Probably pizza. Salad and everything. Let me make a list of the ones you're keeping. So we'll work on it. Mark the shop.
Yeah, still today. Here's the numbers. Here's the, yeah, I know, I read so many of them.
I need more pages.
Sure. And there's 2 pages to that.
thought 3 hours. I didn't think it would be 4.
I think that we all underestimated a little bit.
I'm going to be.
What's the password for getting on the web access here? In here?
I don't know. I don't know what offhand.
Do you mind just sending me an email? I'll find out what it is. Send it to you soon.
That would be wonderful, you know. Some things I can do with the 3G, but some things I can't do.
I just have to ask Patricia's,
When's it going on the website?
what?
The organization chart.
It's already there. It's, if you go to About SFPS.
Jeff, you know what the password is to get on right now?
See, I cannot do that.
I never put it in my computer, so I don't.
But when you do get access,
Yeah, well, when I go home, I'll have access to the internet.
so here's the website.
Congratulations on your wedding.
And I bought the bag. Oh, did you? I bought a Mizuno Elite bag, white, black trim. It's really pretty sharp.
I've got a big box Callaway set, which I had and then fitted and ripped, and I'm not good enough to make a difference. All right.
New Titleist bag.
So I went fish with this guy, steps on my old rod and breaks it. Damn, I gotta buy a new rod. He said, I'll pay for it. I said, no, this is good.
I'd like that, it'd be fun.
How's that?
Yeah.
She should be there.
Excuse me?
For Stephen.
She's back. Okay.
What?
All right. She's right here.
I told him he has to text me to make sure he's not.
He's just going 2 blocks over.
Yes.
Ready for us to go? Oh, you need to.
Okay, I'm calling us back, this meeting back to order.
You ready for me to move on?
Please.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciated that. Very nice. So the first presentation we have for you, but we do need a correction if the board can make a motion to change. It's first reading of new policy 346, recognition and importance of extracurricular, co-curricular, intramural, and athletic team activities. It was assigned the wrong number, so we need a motion from the board to change it to policy number to 349.
Can I have a motion? Can I have a motion? Because she would like us to do it now. Can I have a motion to change the board policy number to 349 on the...
Sure, motion approved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it's done.
Thank you. Ms. Christie, are you Wagner, going to present this one?
Board President, Board Members, Superintendent Garcia. So this is our first reading of our recognition and importance of extracurricular, co-curricular, intramural, and athletic team activities. I think it's really straightforward, but I want to point out that the key elements align with, our hopes for the athletic and activity department and director, as well as the work of the many in the district supporting these programs, that we're aligning ourselves to college and career readiness and providing engaging, interesting, challenging, team building, character building activities and extracurriculars in our schools. So I'll just stand for questions.
A motion to approve?
Do I have a second? Second. Oh, who did that? Oh, you did that. Okay. Did you get that? Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That was fast. First reading is done.
Thank you. May I move on?
Yes, please.
So the next is, and if you would just go ahead and stay there,
Yes.
our first reading of new policy 532, student food services and meal charges. Ms.
Again,
Wagner.
Board President Price, Board Member Superintendent Garcia. The first reading for student food services and meal charges, Board Policy 532, reflects, more sophisticated language and alignment with state and USDA requirements and specific information around meal prices and unpaid meals. And so I will also stand for questions for this first reading.
Move for approval?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? It passes.
Thank you.
All right, we're now at board discussion.
Board of Education representative for district schools, board member,
I'm dropping it.
you're dropping it?
Yeah, I don't feel like discussing it. And then also B, Southside Growth. I feel like that's a leftover from June.
You had that on the, yeah, you did.
I was talking about, I mean, and just what are we going to do when we have 400 more kids, living out there in those, so, yeah, that's left, I feel like that's left over, so drop that too.
All right. C, process for replacing Board of Education member Linda Trujillo. Vice President Cashman.
First of all, we're going to miss all your service to the district. But I think we talked about this at board retreat, but we didn't finalize anything. And so I just think we need to get this on a study session as soon as possible on what are going to be the procedures to replace, even though she cannot be replaced, but to substitute somebody for that seat. What are we going to require for a District 2, not 2, right? 4 representative. So I think we probably need to have it on our first study session, so when people start calling and ask us what is going to be the procedure, we have a procedure in place, and also what is the timeline, because one of the things with Board Member Trujillo resigning for the 5th of December, if we had that person already on board, they could attend the law conference, and so that might be
When is the law
beneficial.
conference?
You mean
the
Convention.
annual conference, sorry, the annual, it's in December.
It's the first
So
weekend
we
of
just- yeah,
December.
so-
Well, then they can't,
Well, they
they
could-
will not be a board member.
Right, but we could pay for them to attend.
I see what you're saying.
And so, but we need to know who would be taking that. So anyways, if we could schedule it for one of our first study sessions. I
Board
think
Member
that's-
Carrillo?
My recollection is we said that we were going to have both that, timing on that and schedule, and also timing and schedule on a strategic plan in the study sessions in August. And so since we're planning on canceling August 8th.
It would be the 29th then,
It'd be
right?
the 29th, so we should just, I mean, can we all agree that we're going to have the Linda plan on the 29th study session?
Linda plan and
And
strategic
strategic
plan.
plan on the 29th.
On the 29th.
And we'll determine timelines and all that then? That sound cool?
That sounds cool to me.
All right.
All right, middle school, is that it? Okay.
Just for clarification, on the strategic plan, we're just going to talk about process, right? About the-
Yes, process. Okay, middle school physics curriculum, Linda Trujillo.
Thank you, Board President. So we talked about this in the retreat, about really focusing on STEM. And I attended the rural and economic development.
Ms. Sink, this is a real important topic.
Yeah, I attended the rural and economic development interim committee meeting for the legislature last week in Ruidoso. And they had this on the conversation again, was this STC, which is See the Change. And it really is, expanding on what we're already doing in elementary school with the Lanel Foundation and taking it into middle school and teaching physics in middle school. And what I discovered, and I know we had talked about Milagro maybe being a pilot project. There is a cost involved. It's about $25,000 for a site. And so, there is an investment, but there's 17 other schools around the state that are moving in this direction, that are taking up this, and I would love to see us even have one. And if Milagro feels like, there's too many other things going on, then I'd like to look at, maybe one of our K-8 programs, maybe Nino Otero, or maybe even Ortiz Middle School. But I feel really passionate about us moving on this, because the research is showing that kids are getting engaged in science and they're not losing interest. I think we've done a great job with Lanel in, keeping them excited and building this interest in science in our elementaries, but we're not carrying that through as much as I'd like to see, and I think we've talked about this in middle school. And so I am communicating with the folks who are promoting that year. I've got a whole packet of information that I can forward on to you. I'd be happy to do that. And in fact, they're having an event in August. I'll send you the information, but there is an event that's coming up where they're going to, in Albuquerque, where they're going to really, talk about how it can be implemented in Albuquerque, and they've invited us to come to that if we'd like to be a part of it.
Really like to see that.
Okay.
One of the things that we've talked about as a team is that middle grade education
Yeah.
really needs to be pumped up,
Yeah.
and the excitement, because we feel like we're losing our kids, as they say, mentally in middle school and physically in high school.
Yeah.
And part of that is somewhat due to the K-8 structure, but then there's also been a little bit of stagnation in middle school in general. So we're excited about trying to reinvigorate that. There'll be a lot of cross-functional teaming on middle grade education. So this fits in with what we've been thinking. So it's timely.
Yeah,
So we
thank
look
you.
forward to following up on it.
Great.
Would
And
you
then the other-
also forward that information to me?
Yes, I'll forward it to Linda, to the superintendent.
And then
She
I'll
can
get it
forward
out
to
to,
you,
I'll get it out to the
Linda,
team,
and out to the whole team.
and I'll send
Yeah.
it to the board.
That'd be great.
Because this also goes along with my passion about girls falling out of science. They're finding, around 5th grade, and that they're feeling like because they're girls, that they don't know. So it'd be nice if we could engage them
Right.
and feed
And
feed
this
their
is-
passion.
This has been most successful in schools that have high populations of low-income and minority students, and, trying to get girls excited
Yes.
about it, too. I did notice that on the Lannell Foundation website, that they're looking for new innovative projects.
Mhm.
And so I'm trying to make some connections
Mhm.
with the guy who I'm communicating with, and then if you maybe could help me maybe Lannell would help us fund.
We've been
a
working
pilot
with Jenny Parks, and I know that they are interested in supporting us on various efforts. So, if we can come up with a good plan, I think that there would be support for exploring that. Ms. Sink, did you want to say something?
Yes, Board Member Trujillo, I just met with Gwen, I've forgotten Gwen's last
Warner, I
name.
know, I was trying to remember.
Yes. So I just met with her, and I told her about my angst about middle school and where we are with the science, at the middle school level. We're doing a good job with the kits and getting elementary teachers, I think, more involved, more and more. That's exciting, but I don't see that rigor. I don't see the participatory kinds of activities in the middle school that I'd like to see in science. So this is perfect because she asked the same thing. We both talked about, what can we do? I'll get back to her on this, and I think they can help us. So we
Wonderful.
just met like last week, so this is real, as she said, very timely.
Things come together for the right reasons at the right time, so.
So thank you.
You're welcome.
Vice President Cashman?
And Roswell has been using this program. I brought it back to you in February. They're more than happy to partner with us I passed all the information to Principal Ducharme. This is exciting, and at that time I said I was pretty sure that Lannell would, because physics is what Lannell's does. It's a great curriculum, but Roswell, their superintendent, I talked with him, plus the actual middle school principal down there, and they said, just pick up so every time I get things, I just forward them on. So I would agree with Board Member Trujillo. We would be missing a golden opportunity.
And some legislators are actually doing golf tournaments to raise the money for their communities. Deming they've got a community fundraiser to raise the $25,000 that they need for their middle school. So even really small communities are finding ways to raise the money because they're so excited about this
And
program.
some of the meetings that Jeff and I have had with some of the community partners, they are waiting to see what will be some of our strategic what would I say, priorities for them to fundraise to help us. They're excited about what we're doing and want to look at this. I think people can get very excited about middle grade education and particularly STEM and physics. So we'll all of this, I think, will come together in a pretty interesting way. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to now advanced planning. My understanding is that there's, oh, I'm sorry.
I have
Board
one more.
member-
I just, one thing. For our board discussion, student board, what's going on? I think in the next meeting, there should be either a 3-minute presentation as to what they're going to do, who's going to do it, because they didn't do any, they got a half a credit, right?
Correct.
Was
This
it
last
half or a
time?
whole credit?
We have
Better
to
not
go
have been a
back
whole.
and look at that,
But-
but I do think it was a half credit. You know, some of that just fell through the cracks in the transition. We are picking up the pieces, I think.
In the
Right,
past,
Christie
it's
and
been
Jeff
handled by
act-
our, the district's lawyer.
I think we're doing it a little bit
you're
differently
gonna do
this
it
year.
differently?
And I think there's going to be some cross-functional teaming over there in that corner.
Okay.
So.
So do we still have Willie and Gabriella?
I think that's the plan, if they want to continue to do that. You
Well,
want
the
to
idea
speak
was
to
they
that?
would
Go
serve-
ahead.
Or whether they have to have another election.
We don't need to know any of that now. but
Yeah. Okay.
In the next meeting,
We'll
Okay,
present
thank
that.
you.
a plan with a credit, just, and we can see it, like something maybe we can even hold.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll make sure you can hold it.
Okay, so moving on to advanced planning, my understanding is that there's a consensus that folks would like the study session on the 8th canceled. So let's cancel the study session on the 8th. We've already talked about what's going to be done on the study session on the 29th. Does anyone else have Christianda? Can you talk to us about the Christian, it's getting late, another C word, the Citizens Review Committee meetings?
Board President Price, on advanced planning, the August 9th meeting, is that next Wednesday?
You are going to have that one, is that correct?
I think that, was there a request from one of our board members
Well, it
to
was-
not have the meeting? Because that is fine for staff. I just wanted to make sure that it was okay, with the board, and then we will do the advance notice, and we would hold what's listed as our tentative meeting
On the
for
23rd?
August 23rd in lieu of the August 9th meeting.
I mean, it was for me. I asked her what to do. It's a personal thing.
That's
And if-
fine. I
But if
just-
people can't do it, that's fine with me. I don't,
That's-
I can cancel the personal thing.
Sounds like we're okay.
Yeah.
And your
Board
staff's
member-
okay,
Board
and-
Member Vice President Cashman?
If we cancel the meeting on the 9th, I will not be at the meeting on the 23rd. So you're going to, no matter what, you're going to have only one board member there. So I would,
If I have any kind of say about it, just a suggestion, we're really gearing up for the start of school.
Yeah.
Staff is really, that's our focus, to make sure that our facilities are ready to rock and roll. So if it's just as well with everyone, I would just as soon not have CRC on the 9th, if it's with the pleasure of the board. Obviously, it's your
And
call.
then do it on the 23rd?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
If the board isn't.
So it wouldn't be tentative on the 23rd, that is a meeting.
great.
All
Thank you.
right. I figured as much, because this is a pretty intense number of weeks we have coming up here. Any other comments about, or discussion about advanced planning?
Just want to extend an invitation again to the board, to the Leadership Institute on Friday, 4 p.m.
What day is that?
It's a Friday.
That's the 8th, oh, no.
The 4th is Friday, this Friday.
Friday the 4th.
At 4 p.m.
Where?
At Buffalo Thunder at the conference
Oh,
center.
yes.
And I can send an email out
Please.
if you need it, but we hope that you can join us on that day. And then again, August 11th is the back-to-school rally with all of our employees. 7:30, donuts and coffee, 8 o'clock. The program starts, but I would recommend you get there early at the Santa Fe High School gym. And I think I've sent you some notes about that, but I'll send it again to you.
And we have to figure out how to get me in and out of that building.
Miss Christy Wagner is going to work with you.
Anything else? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're off, meaning to the races. We're going to start. So I adjourn the meeting. It's the best part of the day.